the gospel, and I love what I do. But I had dreams for my children that were bigger than what I do. I did not want my children to have to fake being me in order to be successful. I wanted to create an entrepreneurial environment for them, and so I started investing in real estate, and I started building communities, and I'm getting ready to build more communities in America, and I'm looking for other places in the world where we can build these communities, these smart communities that are conducive to the future. You do not build your business on where you are or where you've been. You build your business on where you're going. So then, if you are building for the future, then you have to reimagine your strategy. I'm going to give you a couple of big words, big words, like strategy. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to do it through a strategy. I got here through a strategy. What is a strategy? A synchronized step-by-step plan from point A to point B. Your strategy is important. You've got to fix your strategy. If you've been doing what you've been doing for 5 years and it's not working, it doesn't mean you need to give up your idea. You might need to give up your strategy. Your strategy of accomplishment has to change with the times. You may not have hit your customer yet, but that doesn't mean your customer's not out there. You've got to find somebody, and let me tell you who wants what you got. The person who wants what you have is a person who sees what you have as an answer to their problem. People will go get answers. They are not looking for problems. What do you solve with what you bring? And you don't have to have a degree to do this. It must solve that problem and fix that problem. And when you do whatever you do and you find yourself maxing out at what you do is not who you are. What you do is not who you are. What you do is not who you are.
Too often, we drift from one action to another without thinking about the choices we have made. In fact, our direction seems normal that we don't even realize we have made a choice that has significant consequences. The book Line Crossers by Pastor Tola Odutola is a book that helps you find wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strides of hope and confidence. To get a copy of this book, simply visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order and watch yourself cross over into your victory. Conference materials such as audio and video recordings of this conference can be purchased in the GLC website at www.greatleadership.net. A short survey will be available during the conference via a link that will be posted in the chat section of this live stream. Kindly complete this survey. It is easy to become complacent with life. The hurtful backgrounds, failed dreams, and scars from your past gives one excuses for having no expectations in life. However, in the book, I Am Better Than This, Pastor Tola Odutola inspires readers to relentlessly pursue a better future despite the challenges that will surely arise. To get a copy of this life transforming book, kindly visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order.
Thank you for being a part of this year's conference. Your voluntary contributions towards GLC can be made at any of the following platforms. God bless you. For our African viewers, please use Zenith Bank PLC Nigeria Elroy Media account number 101-767-5913. For North American and all other viewers, please use www.alphaleadershipconference.com www.giveinc.net/donate. If you would like to text to give, please use 1-844-503-6946, option 15, ALC. For Zelle donations, please use account@jesushousebaltimore.org. To give via Cash App, please use $Jesus House Balt. To give via PayPal, Jesus House Baltimore. And to give via website, www.jesushousebaltimore.org/give.
Thank you for joining us today at this year's Great Leadership Conference. We are certain that you were blessed by Dr. Sam Chan, Mr. Benke Wellington, Pastor Tola Ojutala, and Reverend Sam Adeyemi's impactful teachings yesterday. Today, Mrs. Audrey Jo Azibo will be speaking on entrepreneurial structure and restructuring, and Mr. Leke Alder will be teaching on building structure and restructuring your brand. We are sure that today's teachings will equip us as leaders with the mindset and capabilities necessary to unleash our potentials and enable us to create structures with high-performing teams. Stay tuned and be blessed.
So when you start thinking about streams of income, think of multiple streams of income. I wanted to preach. I'm called to preach. You know me from preaching. You know me from ministering the gospel. And I love what I do. But I had dreams for my children that were bigger than what I do. I did not want my children to have to fake being me in order to be successful. I wanted to create an entrepreneurial environment for them, and so I started investing in real estate, and I started building communities, and I'm getting ready to build more communities in America, and I'm looking for other places in the world where we can build these communities, these smart communities that are conducive to the future. You do not build your business on where you are or where you've been. You build your business on where you're going. So then, if you are building for the future, then you have to reimagine your strategy. I'm going to give you a couple of big words, big words, like strategy. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to do it through a strategy. I got here through a strategy. What is a strategy? A synchronized step-by-step plan from point A to point B. Your strategy is important. You've got to fix your strategy. If you've been doing what you've been doing for 5 years and it's not working, it doesn't mean you need to give up your idea. You might need to give up your strategy. Your strategy of accomplishment has to change with the times. You may not have hit your customer yet, but that doesn't mean your customer's not out there. You've got to find somebody, and let me tell you who wants what you got. The person who wants what you have is a person who sees what you have as an answer to their problem. People will go get answers. They are not looking for problems. What do you solve with what you bring? And you don't have to have a degree to do this. It must solve that problem and fix that problem. And when you do whatever you do and you find yourself maxing out at what you do is not who you are. What you do is not who you are. What you do is not who you are.
Too often, we drift from one action to another without thinking about the choices we have made. In fact, our direction seems normal that we don't even realize we have made a choice that has significant consequences. The book Line Crossers by Pastor Tola Ojutala is a book that helps you find wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strides of hope and confidence. To get a copy of this book, simply visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order and watch yourself cross over into your victory. Materials such as audio and video recordings of this conference can be purchased in the GLC website at www.greatleadership.net. A short survey will be available during the conference via a link that will be posted in the chat section of this live stream. Kindly complete this survey. It is easy to become complacent with life. The hurtful backgrounds, failed dreams, and scars from your past gives one excuses for having no expectations in life. However, in the book, I Am Better Than This, Pastor Tola Odutala inspires readers to relentlessly pursue a better future despite the challenges that will surely arise. To get a copy of this life transforming book, kindly visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order.
Thank you for being a part of this year's conference. Your voluntary contributions towards GLC can be made at any of the following platforms. God bless you. For our African viewers, please use Zenith Bank PLC Nigeria Elroy Media account number 101-767-5913. For North American and all other viewers, please use www.alphaleadershipconference.net/donate. If you would like to text to give, please use 1-844-503-6946, option 15, ALC. For Zelle donations, please use account at jesushousebaltimore.org. To give via Cash App, please use $JesusHouseBalt. To give via PayPal, Jesus House Baltimore. And to give via website, www.jesushousebaltimore.org/give.
Thank you for joining us today at this year's Great Leadership Conference. We are certain that you were blessed by Dr. Sam Chan, Mr. Benki Wellington, Pastor Tola Odutala, and Reverend Sam Adeyemi's impactful teachings yesterday. Today, Mrs. Audrey Jo Azibo will be speaking on entrepreneurial structure and restructuring, and Mr. Leke Alder will be teaching on building structure and restructuring your brand. We are sure that today's teachings will equip us as leaders with the mindset and capabilities necessary to unleash our potentials and enable us to create structures with high-performing teams. Stay blessed.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining from across the world. My name is Zanita Egifame, and I'll be your host for the Day 2 sessions of the 2022 Great Leadership Conference. I'd like to welcome everyone to this year's conference. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some quick announcements, the first being our newsletter. If you'd like to sign up for the Great Leadership newsletter, you can do so using the link on the screen. You can also sign up via greatleadership.net. This will allow you to stay up to date on all things Great Leadership Conference. Also, we have audio and visual ready for this year's conference for purchase. If you'd like to purchase the audio and visual of this year's conference, you can do so on Alpha Leadership Conference/shop. That will allow you to purchase all the video and audio of this year's conference. Yesterday, we kicked off this amazing conference with insightful sessions from Dr. Sam Chan and Mr. Benki Wellington. We then came back later on in the day and had an exceptional time with the convener of this conference, Pastor Tola Odutala, and concluded things with Dr. Sam Adeyemi. Now, here we are again, Day 2. Before we hop into today's sessions, I would like to give you a quick rundown of the day's events. Our first session will begin with Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo, and she will be speaking on entrepreneurial structure and restructuring. After which, we will have a quick Q&A session and then a short break, allowing you the opportunity to stretch, recharge, and come back re-energized, ready for the last session of today. When we return, we will have creative strategist, Mr. Leke Alder, who will be speaking on structure and restructuring of your brand. After his session, we will have another Q&A. I do want to encourage you guys that while our speakers are giving their presentations, if you do have any questions, comments, please put your questions in the chat box via the platform you're watching on. Again, while the presenters are giving their presentations, if you have any questions at all regarding the topics they are speaking on, you can place your questions in the chat box via the platform you are watching on. I want you to lean in, as these next two sessions will be transformational. Share this link with a colleague, a business partner, a coworker, a friend, someone you serve within ministry, as it will be impactful. Now, without further ado, I will make welcome Pastor Tola, who will introduce our first guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zanita. Good morning, everybody. We thank God for this wonderful day. We slept and we woke up. The Lord sustained us. I want to welcome you again. Thank you for tuning in yesterday. Yesterday was quite impactful. We have very, great speakers, and they were a blessing to us. And today, the two speakers I'll be speaking, I have no doubt that they are going to bless us. This morning, we have with us Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo, and she is in the marketplace, and she understands what it takes to be successful in the marketplace. And this morning, she's going to be sharing with us. And for those of us who are watching her from Africa this afternoon, or you're from UK or Europe this afternoon, she's going to be sharing with us structure and restructuring for someone who is an entrepreneur, who has a business, who has a small-scale business or a large-scale business. And I want us to open up our hearts, and she's going to be a blessing to us. Immediately she finishes, we are going to have Q&A session, and then we have a break, and later we'll round this up for this year with Pastor Leke Alder. Please, I want you to note, next year, the conference will hold 22nd to 23rd of September. 22nd to 23rd of September, 2023. 22nd to 23rd September, 2023. So please, I want you to note that, and so that we are going to have a good time, next year, by God's grace. We don't know our speakers yet, but we believe God that we're going to get good speakers as usual, that they will be a blessing, to us. I want to say one or two things. Yesterday, Reverend Sam spoke eloquently about what we need to do to succeed. And one of the questions that I asked him, was from my own perspective, being a pastor, and I was also asking on behalf of many other pastors. And the things that he shared with us, I want us to take note and take them to heart, because many times as pastors, we just want to do everything. And the truth is that we cannot do everything. So we have to come to a place where you realize that you cannot do everything. And then you begin to do the things that you can do, and the ones that you cannot do because of the scale of the business, of the church, then you begin to delegate to everybody else. So it's important that we understand this so that we don't burn out. I believe Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo is ready. We're going to play the intro for her now, and then she comes in and she's going to share with us. So can we have the intro, please, for Mrs. Jo Ezigbo?
Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo is an experienced leader, business advisor, and coach with a proven track record spanning over 28 years. She has a deep expertise in strategic planning and execution, corporate governance, investor relations, advocacy, entrepreneurship development, and environmental sustainability in the private of public and nonprofit sectors at executive and board levels. Recognized for her results-driven leadership and counsel in building organizations into world-class top producers, she is Deputy Managing Director and shareholder at Falcon Corporation, a leading, wholly indigenous midstream and downstream energy, gas distribution, and trading company, which she co-founded in 1994. She is passionate about entrepreneurship in Africa and committed to actualizing the potentials of SMEs to become large corporations or multinationals. Mrs. Joe Ezigbo is committed to building African institutions that can survive and scale sustainably and developing leaders and managers for these organizations who are global in their thinking and networks. Known as the Double Impact Coach, she is the founder and promoter of the Double Impact Platform, a business training and relationship building foundation for entrepreneurial couples in business together. Mrs. Joe Ezigbo holds several master's degrees in finance, marketing, and business administration from the Lagos Business School, University of Nigeria, and Nnamdi Azikiwe University. She also holds several executive certifications in management, leadership, and governance from Harvard Business School, IE Business School, and the Wimborne Institute. She is married and a mother to 4 amazing young adults. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a kind welcome to Mrs. Audrey Joe Ezigbo.
You're welcome, my sister.
A very good morning to you, Pastor T.
Yeah, good afternoon to you there. It's good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you. And well done for this great work. Well done for that.
We thank God. We are ready, so you can take it from here, and then we'll see you after your delivery for the question and answer. Thank you.
Excellent. So everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're watching from. Today I'm speaking about entrepreneurial structure and restructuring. And I think that is really a key topic for the world that we're in today. And whether you're in the developing world or you're in the developed world, one thing that we know is that private sector is key as an engine of economic growth and advancement. And when we look at the world, we see globally an increasing population that is skewed towards the youth. And so the importance of us being deliberate about elevating the level of entrepreneurial development across the world, especially, of course, in our emerging markets, is really key. Private sector is where we see the aggregation of all the entrepreneurial drive, that spirit of industry, that get up and go, and the expression of potential, creativity, vision, purpose, right? So as an entrepreneur, you are literally doing more than just starting a business. You are carving out a process through which you help to identify opportunities, to allocate resources, to create value and solve problems, to meet unmet needs of people. And of course, you create platforms that then are opportunities to change the way that we do life. So I'm very clear about the fact that those of us who are entrepreneurs, especially those of us that are marketplace ministers, because that's really what we are, our assignment is really critical, especially in the world that we are today. Now, I am also somebody who is really passionate about the concept of building legacy. And so even before I started my business, I've been in business now for a little over 28 years. And from the beginning, it was really clear to me that I wanted to build something that was smart, something that was sustainable, something that would live past me. I used to wonder how, when I was in secondary school, we had some phenomenal businesses whose products I love, for instance, and this is one of obviously helping to let you know that I'm a sweet tooth. I remember Obutola biscuits, for instance. I practically lived on their products. And one day they were just not there. So I really couldn't understand that some brands would just disappear. But at the same time, we had brands like Mercedes-Benz, we had Coca-Cola that has been drawn from generation to generation, and there's so many others. And when I looked at them, I saw that these were family businesses. None of them was started by anyone from out of space. It was just people, one person, 2, sometimes 3, with 1 head, 2 eyes, and all that, 2 ears. So I felt that there must be something that these kind of people do. There must be systems that are put in place, even though I wouldn't have used the word system back then. But it was clear that these were my benchmarks, that I want to spend my life for the glory of God, to build something that is not going to just be about my as we say, my lifetime hustle. Why would you hustle all your life and it fritters away because you left? So I really believe that entrepreneurs, and this topic we're discussing today, structure and restructure, is a legacy conversation. It is a legacy conversation. And this is the first thing I want to put on the table, that any entrepreneur that is looking at what they're doing today, no matter how small it is, no matter how many times you think you've gotten it wrong, understand that you are on a legacy journey, that you're literally on that journey where God says, blessed to be a blessing. There's no full stop after that blessing. It is a continuous one, because our God is also a God of generations. So once you stay in that place where you're constantly looking at what is happening in my market, what is happening in my economy, what is happening with technology, how can I leverage on it, what kind of new ideas are coming to me, what does the world need today? When I look at the economy now, technology means that we don't really have boundaries. You know, we've been talking globalization for years. We even moved into that concept of localization, where it's like think global but operate local. Now technology is even bringing down all those walls. And so you have to recognize yourself. I always say that I personally am an embodiment of transformational potential. That means nothing is impossible for me. That means that I just need to find the niche, the assignment God has given me. And in my case, I'm sitting therefore squarely on the mountain place of business. So I just want to speak today, just in a second, on this conversation around structure. One of the problems that we find a lot of the time with entrepreneurs, and it's understandable, many of us, we just have a vision, there's a burning in our heart, and we jump in. We don't necessarily have the resources that we need to create these big, gigantic, great structures from the beginning. And so we tend to make the proverbial same sets of mistakes. When I talk to entrepreneurs today, I find that those kind of mistakes I made back in 1994, I'm still hearing people do the same thing. But I've journeyed past that. And so for me, it's a passion to continuously come back and speak to entrepreneurs so that even if you're just a year, or you haven't started, but you're thinking to start, or you're 5 years, 3 years, 7 years down the line, you can begin to look at what are some of the traditional errors? Why do we make them? How can I better restructure? Because I think that the conversations to entrepreneurs, especially from a kingdom perspective, is that we're not just talking about growth, where how do I grow, how do I scale, and all that. It's that we're literally talking about taking territory for God. And I'm going to spend maybe a couple of minutes on this. We all know, or we should know, this whole concept of the 7 mountains, right? And those of us who are in enterprise, so it's the mountain of entrepreneurship business. I think that the enemy doesn't want to see enough of the believers, those that carry God's light and life, building large, formidable businesses on that mountain, because immediately we have that kind of capacity, we finance kingdom. And so you have to see yourself on a bigger assignment than just this, I'm just trying to hustle, I'm just trying to make it. No. You are actually on God's assignment. God told me clearly one thing. He said, Audrey, you are a builder of bridges. You are a financier, kingdom financier, builder of bridges between men and ministries. So I'm very clear that I need to build, I need to continue to grow, scale, structure, restructure, whatever it takes to keep taking territory, because I'm on God's assignment to build the kingdom. So the thing that troubles my heart the most, therefore, becomes, how do we prepare entrepreneurs? How do we position businesses, especially in our emerging economies, but even overseas, especially in the MSME space? How do we position them for that kind of exponential, transgenerational growth and still build them in a way that glorifies God? And the difference comes into the narrative of institution building. So if we'll spend a little time, and I'm going to get to structure and all that, but just to think a bit about what it means to build. Building for me is a word that is multidimensional. It speaks to structure, it speaks to development, it speaks to forming, conforming and reforming. So when you think about structure and restructure, it's the same thing we're talking about. To me, building something means working with God. It's a co-creation issue. And to me, that is also embedded in the principle of Kairos and Chronos. Like there's a time and a season that God positions you and puts resources around you if you're attentive to then take that venture and do greater things. Right? So building to me speaks about expanding your potentials, consistently broadening the opportunities just by the things that you do that's your enterprise. So we are put on earth to optimize God's purposes, And you must understand that what you are doing, this conversation we're having, is about you leveraging on your platform, the platform of your business, to then be able to fulfill God's assignment. So when you begin to think about this as a person, you understand therefore that even though you're talking about structuring and restructuring your business, the conversation you and I are having today is about how we bring an alignment between our spiritual assignment, our spiritual mission, and the mission of the corporate entity that we're building. That is where we get to the point where our success is a success that is good success. It's a success where kingdom is glorified, and it's a success that then touches on generations. So let's talk about structure. Of course, we know that we can decide to do different things when we're starting a business. And so many of us who are listening, some of us are actually limited liability companies already, but there are some of us who are perhaps still running our businesses as ventures, right? We don't want to go through the hog of registration and all that. I think that's very strange. I hear some people say things like, oh, when I register the business, I now have to pay taxes. Why are we running away from that? Even Jesus said that we should give to Caesar what is his due, right? So you have to begin to start thinking to yourself, if I want to grow, if I want to scale, if I want to build something sustainable, something that has a legacy that goes past me, then I must be willing to put in place the structure and frameworks that allow me to create that. So let's say you're already running a business or you want to start. What is the first thing we want to look at? Obviously, I will first assume that your mission is clear, that the vision is clear, that you're not just doing the traditional copycat syndrome of, oh, this seems to be successful, let me jump into it. But that literally, this is you and God, you process something is put in your heart and ask you to start. The best way then to begin to look at the business from a structure perspective is to ask yourself, so where is this business going? Which means you want to think about what the business looks like today when you're limited in your resources and capacity, it seems, to where it would go in the next few years when you begin to grow as the Lord helps you, and what it might look like maybe in 10, in 20, 15 years time, right? And then begin to drill down to what is the organizational chart going to look like? This may seem very basic, but I always like to start this kind of a conversation from here because at the end of the day, when we are in entrepreneurship, some of the mistakes we make stem from just hiring spontaneously. We haven't thought through who we need. We haven't thought through why we need them. We haven't thought through what the exact competencies they are bringing to the table are. And we haven't even thought about their capacity to grow. No matter how early your business is, you want to be sure that you are hiring people that have headroom to grow because they're going to be with you for some time and you'll be investing in them. But the truth is, at some point, some of them cannot go to the next level with you. But what's the point of hiring people whose capacity is already capped? So you want to think about that. The organizational chart, who will I need today? What will the organization look like today? But as I begin to grow and scale, what are some of the competencies that I'm going to need? And then what kind of skills will they be coming in? What kind of attitudes will they be coming in? Then you want to be able to define for the business, what are the departments that will be required? Now, even for where you are, where like many of us started, I was the accountant, I was the marketer, I was my own driver, we all started from there. But there still has to be some vision where you begin to map out what would be the core functions of the department of your organization and create some kind of departmentation scheme. So you're going to need a finance department, even if you don't have it. You're going to need an HR department because you're believing God for growth. So as early as possible, you want to be having a focus on the people element as resources in your business. You're going to have an operations team, you're going to have a quality team, and so on and so forth. I'm taking the context from my industry, which is the energy space, right? Having looked at what are the different departments that I need now, you also want to ask yourself, what might I need later? For instance, like I said, I've been in business now, this is going on almost 3 decades, but it's only, I think about 5-6 years ago that we finally now set up an independent internal audit and control department because the business had matured into a phase where it could no longer be a function subsumed under other departments. So you want to think about that future and then design that organogram. And importantly, look for what is related so that we don't have issues of personality clashes. Nobody really knows who's responsible for what, and so on and so forth. So there must be a reporting and responsibility matrix. And here's the thing that I find, so that it doesn't sound too high up there. And I'll give an example with the standard operating procedures that you need within your business. Many years ago, I think very early in 2000, I came across, that was when I really heard for the first time the concept of putting in place standard operating procedures within my business. And it made so much sense because at that point in time, we were always fighting fires. And the typical fire we would fight would be, we can't find the document. There's no filing system. This person said I had it last, the other person said I had it last. But I listened to someone talk about SOPs and I thought, okay, this makes absolute sense. So we know that there's a procedure even for this document, how it comes in and how it moves around until it is filed, how it is retrieved and recorded and so on. And so I invited consultants to come and give us the proposal around this. When they brought the kind of bills they brought, at that point in time, we could not afford it. But I knew this was important to our business. And so what I decided to do was I called meetings with every department, whether there were 3 in the department or there were 10. And I sat everybody down. Manually, we started to discuss what happens in your department. And then we were, taking notes until we all had a framework that we agreed on, this is how we do it. Then we called all the departments together and said, okay, when the document leaves admin and goes to engineering, what happens? So we could also create that interconnectedness. And I can promise you that we use those internally generated standard operating procedures for many, many years before we were able to then hire consultants to come and refine based on where we were at that time. The importance of standard operating procedures in our business also is that as entrepreneurs, especially as younger entrepreneurs, right? We have what we call key man risk. We have that all the time in business, but when you're in a sensitive early phase of your business, you may find that you depend so much on some particular competencies. Indeed, you may be a key man risk in your own business. And setting in place standard operating procedures means that you map out what is required for every single job function, such that even if somebody suddenly leaves you, you can hire someone else, even if it's a quick hire that you don't feel is as competent, and you give them a manual and tell them just follow it step by step. These are the kinds of things that create structure, that create institutionalization, and that allow your business to stand and not shake when some things hit on it. Policies are also going to be key. Many times as younger businesses, we're so busy just trying to make the money, trying to make the business grow, that we're not stepping back to ask, what are the core policies of my business? What are my policies around people? What are my policies around working capital, our finances? Do you have a treasury policy? For instance, you have a lot of money sitting in the bank once in a while. Do you know that you can put that money, if you have a policy whereby, say you must never have more than $5,000 in the current account, means that every time you have $10,000, you take the extra 5 and fix it in some kind of investment where it's yielding interest. And that's what we call value creation. So these are some of the things we don't think about from an early point of view, and we keep leaving value on the table. I remember that there was a time here in Nigeria, things are very different now, when just by our treasury operations, making sure that every extra cover we had was either in the money market or treasury bills or commercial papers, we were earning a significant amount of revenue just by placing money. Now, in terms of structure, you have to ask yourself also, in terms of my people, in today's world, it's a big conversation. Do I want to own the people or do I want to rent them? And what that means is that outsourcing is a thing. You don't have to put a heavy overhead around your business for you to say, I'm running a company. These are the days of cost optimization. These are the days of looking for efficiencies. So part of looking at your structure is looking at that model to say, what do I need to own? What do I need to rent in terms of my asset? And this includes my people. But of course, if you're going to rent people, we expect part of your structure is that there will be proper contracts with whoever is providing those resources, and everything is well documented and signed off. Indeed, even with the people that you own, that is your full-time hire, pardon the word own, it's just industry lingo. Those people who work for you, part of structure is making sure they have clear job descriptions, employment letters, and their lines of communication are clear. In looking at your business structure, you want to be asking yourself things like, what kind of technology can I use to support my business? And okay, if you're an early stage entrepreneur, it could be expensive. But again, we're in an era where there are a lot of free resources. within limits, or some less expensive software that can help you to create efficiencies and take away some of the things that create problems within the system. Remember, in my view, and I hold this very strongly, your business is a kingdom platform. Therefore, you don't want to do shabby, you don't want to do shoddy, because God is a God of excellence. And whatever tools He has given us in today's world at our disposal to do things in our excellent best way, we must leverage on them. Part of your structure is looking at things like your supply chain. Where are the efficiencies? Where do I need to put what in place, right? Some people are actually going as far as doing partnership instead of doing a direct backward or forward integration. You just want to have a partner who is maybe at one level of your value chain, and you people create those kind of synergies that create value for both people. So look at your supply chain. Ask yourself something. This is a big part of structure. It's a governance conversation, and I'm going to come to that in a bit more detail. What are the licenses and permits that you require in this business at the stage where you are now and for later? You don't want to grow and be at some point, what will hook you is that you didn't conform. And besides, your reputational equity is really key. The biggest part of which is that you are brand Jesus in the marketplace. So we don't want to be the ones building these things that start having integrity issues because we're not complying with the permitting and licensing structure that undergird our businesses. You also want to look at, like I said, internal controls, because many things happen within that time where as entrepreneurs we're running to make things happen. We're dealing with many people, and even as our businesses begin to grow, many times is where we begin to see slippages because we're not totally in control anymore. So you want to begin to step back and think, where are the points where there might be a difficulty, where there may be control issue, even in terms of communication with the external world, that may be a problem for the business. So some of the elements and things that underpin a sustainable corporate structure is one, your strategy, like I said. So you have the mission, you have the vision, but you need to sit down, pull a team together. It's your team internally, but also I think in today's world, we have a lot of resources that are available for you to do a serious brainstorming and strategy session, where you're looking at it, whether it's from, we used in my company, the balanced scorecard approach. So you're looking at it across different dimensions, the impact on your financials, your customers, your policies, your internal capacity, and all those things. Think about the business strategy. Today, we find that because of COVID and all that, we're still dealing with there are too many undulations. You want to find that fine balance between being a structured business and still maintaining a flexibility that allows your strategy to adapt. And that doesn't happen without you sitting down and processing some of these things that I'm saying. You want to think about the objectives of your business. What do you want to achieve in this particular year? So how many of us are able to do a 5-year strategic planning? That's really important to structure because things keep coming your way. And if you don't have the capacity to say, no, this is not in alignment with where we're going, you'll be distracted, doing many things and never quite going anywhere. I remember when I started my business, we were literally just looking for opportunities everywhere. And I think we were a bit of a jack of all trades at that point in time until, thank God, we began to kind of hone in on something. And today we are one of the biggest names in gas in Nigeria. You want to pay attention to, like I said earlier, your people, your talent management. How are you building your people? I find a lot of the time as early entrepreneurs, and sometimes even when we've matured a bit, we are still the be all and end all in our business. Decisions can't be taken without us. We are the ones that need to sign everything. And we're very proud of the fact that we carry all the institutional knowledge and we know how to do things best. I want to ask us to just step back and look at the Jesus model, because Jesus actually literally was empowering his disciples to the degree that at some point he's telling them that, look, greater works, go ahead and do greater. And this is the model we're supposed to follow. I've heard it said many times that if your business is structured in such a way that you must be there every single second, then actually you don't have a business, you're not running a business, you have a job. So, we want to think about how we empower our people. It's part of your structure conversation. A lot of the time, yes, you hear people say, oh, you empower them and they leave, you train them and they leave. My personal philosophy is that our assignment is to build people. And if those of us who are entrepreneurs at different levels all focus on training and capacity building, what it actually means is that there's a larger pool of people who are competent that we can pull from to replace those that we lose. But if we don't train, one, we get sub-optimization internally. And ultimately, someone else will poach them and invest in them, and it's still a loss at the end of the day. Part of your focus on building structure is looking at that continuous improvement mindset. Is it embedded within your organization? Are you stuck on this is how we do it and there's nothing better? Every time I employ a new person, the first thing I say to them is, look, I know we're already a very well-established business, but you're coming with a lot of experience from a different industry, a different organization, and I expect you to come and add value. So I expect that you can look at the system, look at the process and say, you know what, based on where I'm coming from, if we tweak this a bit, we can do this better, we can do this faster, we can do this at less cost. So think continuous improvement. That always helps to put, and you empower your people to have the same mindset. You want to think about your customer management. How can you build a business that has no measured way that you engage with your customers? Not just from a profit point of view, but from an experiential point of view. So no matter the space you are, you want your customers to recognize that you value them, that you know that they are your bread and butter, so to speak, that you are interested in them. Go into understanding their industry and the things that are their own points of pain. Those could actually create more sustainable lines of business for you. Financing is key. So when we're talking about structure, from the early stages of business, I remember when I started, we just had one clerk who studied accounting somewhere. But I was determined that I must have some kind of record keeping because I knew it was part of the big vision I had in terms of building a sustainable business. And even though at that point, even the board I had at that point thought we couldn't afford an auditor, I insisted we should get an auditor. We found one, not any of the big ones, but to audit nonetheless. So you want to think about how you're keeping your books within the company. And it is never too early to start. Because one day, as it happened in my case, you are going to be faced with potential partners. We had a venture capital investment, one of the top venture capital firms that took equity in our business at some point. And the things that attracted them was how much structure, the processes were mapped out and documented, procedures were in place, documented, the financial management, everything was in place. We had even delegation of authority, whereby we knew who could approve what at different phases. And they were surprised, and that was one of the things that made them to invest. So when you start early, to make sure you're keeping the right record, and because we are kingdom people, we keep only one set of records, we show it as it is. You're making sure that all the backup, your audit trail is there, and so on and so forth. It's actually positioning for a potential point at which you can sell the business or get a partner that changes the trajectory of the business, right? So these are just some of the things I wanted to touch on. But when I think of my business, by the grace of God today, when people ask me, so what exactly are you building? I say to them that, look, one, I'm building a conglomerate, which means that I'm not focused on any, and yes, my primary industry is the energy space, but I see that opportunities can come. And even within that energy space, I see that there are opportunities that are yet to be mined and we must be positioned. So to me, you are building like a group of smart companies that we manage on global best practices. We may be a company in Nigeria, but that doesn't mean we cannot benchmark by, with the best. And we are certified to the best of global standards for quality management, for safety, for environmental, and all that, because that is the way we are looking at it. But it comes from the slow incremental steps that we started to take many years ago when people would even say to us things like, oh, your own is too much. This is a tiny company. You're acting as though you're a shell. Hey, well, today they're not saying that anymore. So we're committed to delivering long-term return on investments to our shareholders. But the caveat for us, because like I said, it's about the kingdom representation. We always say it's about doing this in an ethical and sustainable manner. And if you don't have the right fundamentals, one day the house is going to collapse. We want to be able to make tangible positive impact on the lives and communities that we operate in. This is important because when you're thinking structure, you also have to remember that you don't operate in a silo. You're situated in a community. So what kind of roles and responsibilities as a corporate will you engage that community with? You must be able to think about it in advance because they can make or mar your business, right? Now, so we are very intentional about delivering world-class performance. We don't joke with it. We want to always see ourselves as those who are contributing to moving the economy forward, to building capacity. So we're always training and retraining and all that. And a very strong system of governance and controls, financial controls, social models of excellence, and so on. So this is my vision for the company, that we are a company that that people also benchmark on. And this is important to me because even as our vendors and subcontractors, we do a lot of training and education around this. So we know that today we have built an institution. I can walk away from my company. I don't have to be there on the day-to-day basis because the frameworks are there. The policies, all that are there. But we also have people that have capacity because we've developed them and we've given them the authority and the responsibility, the freedom to move the business forward in alignment with that strategic plan and the mission for the business. So there are many pillars, but it is a lot of work and it is intentional work, and it always correlates back to the vision. So we've talked about, and I want to kind of jump into restructuring because I feel that the same sets of things come in, whether you're just first trying to put the structure in place or you are being called to stop somewhere and restructure. And God knows that out of COVID, many of us had to restructure. Many of us had to do things very differently. But even without that, by God's grace, we put that aside, is the sensitivity to the market, to the industry, to what is happening with your customers. There are different things that can cause people to decide to restructure. And so what are the things we may be looking for? So first of all, if you have noticed that you have a lot of operational inefficiencies, there are always challenges in the organization. And it could even just be that you're always having people clashing with each other and you don't know why, right? It could be that there's something you need to restructure. I'll give you an example. In a very recent case that we had, actually, we had two people in a job, two different job roles, but they were both reporting to the same person. And something within those job roles, I don't know how they internalized it, but each of them felt that they were responsible for that particular thing, even though it wasn't captured that way in their job descriptions. And so it was always a case of are you trying to take my job? Who is responsible for it? It was just such a mess. Eventually, we had to sit down and go back to look at the language to say, okay, let's rework this, let's rework that. And beyond that, we now found that we actually had to create a different line where the other person had to report differently. And that took care of the issue. So sometimes in the course of your business or anything, you pay attention to where are the challenges I'm seeing? Is there any inefficiency? Where is our pace of responding to issues slow? You know, as they say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So no matter how great you built it, sometimes if you see that there are some things that keep recurring, you go and pay attention and you begin to look at it. It could be that a key man has left or a key woman, and you have to now think, how can I fill this gap? In many ways, in thinking about how to fill that gap, one of the things I recommend to is that you see that, okay, this particular position must always have a second position that is benchmarking it very closely. In our case, for instance, we had that kind of situation a few years ago. Even though we've always had a very clearly articulated succession plan where we are marking who are the two key successors to any position, we are training them and building capacity. And at this point in time, we really literally lost, like, I think the first and the second two people. What do we do? What we had to do was go back to the entire organizational chart. And like I said, we always do future planning. So we have the organogram for today, we have the one for tomorrow. But business is dynamic. So we went back, we looked at it and realized that even in that future plan and in the current plan, we had to recreate that very top level. And it, of course, had impact for the succession plan. So what I'm trying to say is that in looking at your structure and restructuring, there's an element of adaptability that you must also factor in. Again, keep the vision. It's always that big picture. What are you building? Where are you going with this? And who is going to take the glory for what you're doing? Sometimes you have to restructure because maybe your company is merging or is being acquired by someone to some degree. Like I said, we have had equity investors. And what that meant at that point was that even though as the owner of the business, there were some decisions I could no longer make, a new level was created between the executive management and the board. So we had what we call an executive committee. That changed the dynamics of many things, but it was work that we sat down, thought through, figured out, gave the responsibilities, figured how it would interface with everything else, such that eventually when those investors exited, we had a recovery plan to go back to what existed before that came up. Sometimes it could be that the market has changed. I mean, our customers are dynamic. If your customers are young people, so if that's your core demographic, then you need to be paying attention to the fact that when those ones grow, There are generational differences, and those nuances may impact on how they interact with your products, right, or your service. So today we talk about millennial, Gen Z, Gen that. From a business point of view, you have to be as adaptable, and you may need to restructure, even if it is your marketing communication in this case, so that the messaging you have still makes sense to that other generation. You may have to look at the routes through which you push the messages. So now it is more social media, it's more apps, it's more, the best of brands are on TikTok now because there is a huge young audience that is their market target. So you want to rethink that. And sometimes when you have to rethink your marketing communication style, it may impact the people that you have. So restructuring is never about just one tiny thing. There is always a system-wide approach that you have to be paying attention to. Sometimes you may need to restructure because there's been a change in government policy, and something that made sense and was legal and right to do within your business or industry is no more that. So you are paying attention. Or it could be that you want to downsize. So if you build this huge structure and things change and maybe technology comes that allows you to be more nimble, you also have to be intentional about how you restructure. You don't just throw people out, you don't just throw processes out. Again, it's the sitting down, it's the thinking through, being very strategic about what needs to happen. Many years ago, so my company, coming out of that whole experience with the venture capital partners, we had to, and we've been in business for many years, but we had to do what I called it then Project Gold, right? And that gold actually stood for God-ordained leadership development exercise. And the core objective was that, of course, we said we wanted to restructure so that we will further institutionalize our business processes, our practices, so that it will lead to us becoming a fully system-dependent organization that will have the right kind of processes, properly motivated people at every level, leaders at every level, and allow us to be adaptable with the evolving undulations of our industry and the nation. What that meant was that we took different pillars of the business. We looked at our staff. Who are we going to need? Out of those that we have, who do we need? Who do we need to reinforce their skills? And who perhaps, do we not need to go forward with because their roles are no longer required, or because they have not demonstrated the capacity? And that's a bit of an emotional, difficult decision to make, but you have to have the fortitude when you are restructuring to make some hard decisions. We have to look at the business model itself and say, okay, what needs to shift? Where do we gain efficiencies? What do we need to add? What do we need to reinforce? We have to look at the skill set across board, including ourselves. So we instituted what we call the Falcon Academy, so that all our trainings till that time have been more on the technical. But at this time, we recognize that behavioral competencies, the softer side of things, that they actually had a way of impacting on how we did business, how we related with each other and with the market and so on. So there was a whole skills mining and revisiting that needed to happen. We looked at the systems we already had in place. What is working, what is not working? Do we need an ERP? Do we not need an ERP, an enterprise resource plan software? Or are there things that we can internally generate in terms of the processes using the apps and software we already have to recreate some of our processes for efficiencies? We looked at our business strategy, like with what has happened now, where are we going? Do we need to adapt? Do we need to evolve and all that? What's the direction of the business given what was happening at that point in time? And so on and so forth. So it was a very robust and rounded process that took us quite a few months to do. We looked at different dimensions and then came to the place of positioning ourselves for where we are today. So structuring and restructuring is intentional. It can be a bit time consuming, but it is well worth it because your mandate is to build an institution, not just to run a mom and pop store. And even if you choose to run a mom and pop store, perhaps you want to be the most efficient, most respected mom and pop shop that you can that can be handed over to the next generation. You want to even think about things like what kind of structure. We have to look at that. A lot of our contemporaries were well, not necessarily in the industry, but people who had operated for as many years as we had, they were beginning to flatten out their organizational structures, kind of make it like everybody is just everybody know, manager, know this, know that. But we had to step back and say, our industry is a bit formal, and we want to pay attention to some of those nuances. So we stepped away from that. But for some people, it could be that you want to flatten it out a bit because of where you are, what your customer needs, all those things I talked about in terms of what is shifting around you. All right. And of course, the thing with structure and restructuring is that you don't do it by yourself. This is not something you as the entrepreneur just sits down and you take all the decisions and you come and pass it on to your people. That doesn't work. You will lose some good people, you will frustrate some great people, and you just confuse everybody, sometimes including yourself. So the best way to do it, and this for us has worked for years, is to engage with your people. Like sit them down. The best of ideas for me have always come from my people. Talking about what the business needs to do. Talking about where the business needs to go. Talking about the changes that need to happen. Even those hard conversations around the fact that we may have to let some people go and bring people in. It is easier when there's honesty, when there's transparency, so they understand what is happening. And especially where you as an entrepreneur, there's no nepotism. So they're not seeing you holding on to your cousins and all that while you are busy firing other people that are not related to you. And of course, in this place, then, part of putting your structure in place, every time you want to shift any of the elements, you want to think about change management, how best you can get people to champion what you're doing. Because I can tell you something, it's actually usually easier for them to buy in when it's coming from one of them themselves. So always think about this as a business person, as an entrepreneur. I'm building something that is sustainable from the perspective of kingdom, which is still Jesus comes, it's transgenerational. I want to keep creating value. I want to keep dispensing value. I want the light of this business to so shine that God is glorified in the marketplace, which means I want to be thinking operational excellence. I want to be mindful of the quality of my product. What do you do? What do you have in place when the price of your inputs is escalating and you still want to be able to deliver value to your customers without compromising on quality? Well, there are different technologies and techniques for value engineering, right? And so you look into that, then you begin to document, okay, we need to do this. Sometimes you can save a lot of money by, changing the color of the packet of your product while retaining the color of your logo. I've heard that before. So it's again just thinking about what needs to happen. You ask yourself, what are the best practices in my industry? Which ones is my business mature enough to adopt at this time? And for anyone you want to adopt, again, engage your people and do the change management. You want to ask yourself, how is my customer interacting with me? And how do we do better? That's a big part of maintaining excellence. When you listen more to the customer, in our case, we touch base with our customers in a formalized way, right? We do a customer survey twice a year and then take the results of that. We allow them to be deep about whatever issues they may have, and then we send teams to engage with them to see how we can do better. Even when they have told us what we've done well, we still continue to engage because that customer focus is part of you ensuring continuity, sustainability, and a lot of the time, the best of your ideas in terms of new opportunities can actually come from your customers. All right, I've talked a lot about people, so I'm going to leave it at the fact that you have to remember that God says that we are called to love our neighbors, right? As we love ourselves. And I always say that for those of us who are entrepreneurs, our easiest neighbors are our staff. So you want to put in place structures and processes that ensure your people are happy, that they're engaged, that they love to come to work. One, because they know what they're coming to work for, so the plan is clear, it's well communicated to them, their job descriptions are crisp. You have a lot of things that create the fun side of the business, whether it's First Friday, movie nights, CGI, whatever you call it, those things that allow them to be people and human. You allow them to build capacity. You step away, even in your meetings, delegate so that your people can build the capacity to run the business in your absence. You don't always have to be the one speaking, even in meetings you are in. Train your people, put a training framework in place. If you can't even afford to spend money on all the training outside, you have relationships you can leverage on and occasionally ask them to come and speak to your people and to train them on some aspect or the other. What you want to do is to do two core things. Create a sense of ownership in your people, and this comes by working in an increasingly structured organization. And you also want to make sure that there's a succession pipeline. And because they can see their trajectory within the organization where there is a future organogram, as I referred to earlier, they are not resistant to your attempts to put a succession plan in place. Now, one of the biggest things that comes in the conversation around structure and restructuring is governance. You must have a governance framework in place. You see, as entrepreneurs, because we are the decision makers, and in many cases, we are owner managers, so we are the be-all, we are the end-all. Unfortunately, what that means is that we also bring our gaps and our shortcomings into that space. No matter how great you are as a leader, we're all flawed human beings, right? And when you now have the power to decide everything, if you're not careful, we may actually find ourselves in a place where we optimize processes and potentials of our business. We may even constrain opportunities completely. So part of that checkmating of ourselves is to see whether we can put a board in place, whether it's an advisory board or a full board of directors that you are accountable to. That puts a bit of a check on our excesses. That also forces us to be able to think and engage and build capacity as owners ourselves, because we have to go and project the things we're trying to do and defend them to a board and be, in conformance with whatever they say. A board will also help you to ensure that you're always looking at the compliance part of your business. Those of us who are kingdom marketplace ministers, we have no business absolutely being among the ones that don't pay taxes, that dodge licenses and permits because we don't want to spend money, or that call people to start asking them to reduce something and we give them a little kickback. God forbid. That is not brand Jesus, that is not brand kingdom. So compliance is enforced when you have a board of the right kind of people who are also holding you accountable, and then you deal with your personal accountability to God. So I think this is really important from a governance point of view. You yourself as the owner manager, are you accountable to the business? Are you still dipping your hand in the business finances? Are you still making decisions on the fly? One of the best parts of putting your SOPs, having clear, crisp policies, having your finances and structure and giving people responsibility is that there are some things, even though you own the business, you can't just do on your whim. Ask yourself constantly, if I wasn't the one managing the business, let's say I own this business and I hired somebody to run this business for me, what are my expectations of that person? Document those things and hold yourself accountable. A good part of putting structure in your business is ever increasing the extent and level of your personal accountability to the right things to do by your business. All right. And again, making sure that you are not the one that are, you sign the policies and procedures for other people to obey, and then you are the one shooting them in the foot. What that means is that you're actually not working in integrity. What that means is that your people actually, all that work you're doing, they see it as a house of cards that can crumble once Oga or Madam, just has a different view because they don't even comply with the things that they put in place. So you yourself are a key part of the structure you want your business to adopt. You are the one that will set the tone for culture. You are the one that would, especially if you're positioning yourself as someone who is carrying the glory of God, someone that is a kingdom, a glory carrier, yeah? So if you are the one that does things that make your people say, and she calls herself a Christian, I mean, I don't know what structure you're building, and I don't know what legacy you're living. So you always want to think about the way I embrace the different facets of my business is part of the structure, actually, because it creates a culture. And you know that culture can kill anything. We say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? You can have the best strategy. If the culture in the organization is toxic, if it is slow, if it is just, all scattered, your best of strategies and all these things won't add up to anything. So always think about governance. Always think about how do I institutionalize. A big part of structure, for instance, is setting up a budget. Every year, making sure that you are planning towards the next year and putting a budget in place. Sometimes young entrepreneurs say to me, but ma'am, I don't really know, my cash flows are not yet established, so I don't really know how to budget. I'm like, okay, you know what, even if you just did an expenditure budget, that's even a good starting place, because the reality is that you will buy diesel in our own context, you will pay for some bills, you will do this, you will do that, you will pay salaries. Even just the discipline of articulating what your annual spend might be on a monthly basis it has a way of putting, a certain framework around the business. And if you then have a sort of sense of the kinds of pipeline of projects you're chasing, or you've gotten to the place where you have a steady flow of income, budgeting helps you to think through end to end how this business will perform in this year. When am I going to need a short-term loan or an overdraft or something? Where am I going to have excess cash that I can now invest? As I said earlier, even if it is a 4-3-day window or it's a 1-month window, to create added value and income for myself, for the business, and so on and so forth. So having those kinds of things in place then make for structure. And it's all work. The one thing that everything I've said lands on the altar of work. When we're talking about building legacy businesses, especially the kind that God can take glory from, it ends on the altar of work. We have to do the work. But the beauty is that we have the resources, we have the leadership of the Holy Spirit, because He Himself can just give you some strategies that you couldn't have found on any Google or any search engine platform. He Himself can give you the kind of resources by way of people you just come into contact with, or even within the organization. You can just put an idea in someone's heart that can change the way that the company stands. So it's very important that we're thinking about the long term, and we're thinking, what are the things that I need to do to ensure that my business is strong and sustainable into the long term. As I begin to wrap up, part of the things you want to think about, especially because we're talking kingdom, is your partners, the quality of your partners, your strategic alliances. Who are you, as we say, getting in bed with? We don't want a situation where we just want to partner with people because we see the dollar signs, but we know that this partnership is going to create compromises. So even putting in place something that allows you to say that these are the kind of people we partner with, these are the kind of people we say no to, is part of that, because many businesses have crumbled because they partnered with people who ultimately were unethical, did something that's eroded their brand value, and it impacted on everyone. So you want to think about that too. You want to think about the fact that we're global now. So your partnerships don't always have to be in one place. If you want to take your business into some other part of the world, are you thinking about who you can partner with? You don't have to go set up an office there. There's franchising and stuff like that. So being able to think about structure from the perspective of, as this business grows, how am I going to scale it? There's an element of my business, for instance, my gas business, where we have clearly identified that the best way to scale, the way we want to scale based on the vision we have for that line, is by franchising. And that's the model that, honestly, we've been doing a deep dive drilling to develop the systems and policies and procedures that will support that business ever before we launch out. I hope I'm back on. Excellent. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, so these are the things that I wanted to share at this point in time in terms of how we build structure for our businesses. And to say that, again, the structure conversation is important because you want to build those brands that glorify, you want to build the transgenerational brands, and you want to make sure that all your efforts don't just land on the altar of when you die. That's the end of the matter. So I look at my company today and I see personally, God has been faithful. We've been diligent and God has been faithful. I'm seeing a company that is literally living out the vision. We're working out that mission to just glorify God. So we're very strong on our social responsibility. We don't compromise on ethics. We've lost a lot of seemingly great opportunities because we're clear what we're doing, right? It's a company that has a great management team with very strong governance. My people, I just love them. In fact, they challenge me constantly, but they also give me peace because I know that they have the capacity so that even if I step out fully right now, the business can continue to grow. And that, I think, is what every entrepreneur's dream is, or should be, even if you're just starting, right? We have great, this is everything we've done has been 100% Nigerians. I'm always very proud of that because, to build and grow a business in Nigeria to the level we have, it's not easy, right? But we have great relationships with our stakeholders, with the industry. We have a brand, very good, strong brand, but it was a lot of work. And we saw that brand was one of the pillars of our structure, our legacy conversation. So we've been very intentional about promoting and defending the brand. We've worked at business models, what works for today, and we have a very aggressive growth trajectory. But there is an element of flexibility we've tried to embed, because out of the last few years, we have seen that things can shift. Strategy is no more static, it's very much evolving, and you have to be dynamic. The word I think we use now is agile, so that your company and all your efforts don't just collapse because something shifted. We're very focused on quality. So like I said earlier, ISO certified, we're very strict on safety and so on and so forth. And for us, we feel that the future is bright. When I look at my business and what God has helped me to do, it is from there that I have the confidence and the desire, the zeal to continuously show up at conversations like this, to encourage other entrepreneurs and say this. First, you can do this. I don't have two heads, and neither do the Mercedes, Coca-Cola people that were my own benchmark. Secondly, and maybe that's even the first actually, is that God expects it of you, that you are on assignment, as I've said, and that's the biggest picture. Therefore, God's assignment cannot be handled in a casual way. God himself is a God of systems and structures. Everything in the world is connected. The first time I heard the concept of reflexology, I was amazed that at the base of somebody's foot, there are parts of the foot that connect with your liver, your kidney, your this, your that. Finding out that if I had a headache, there's a part of my palm I can press and the headache goes, because God is that mindful. The water goes from the land back into the air, back onto the land. It's a cycle. God connected the dots. Therefore, even your business is a connected dot, is part of the mandate, is part of the assignment, and you have to think about it like that. Think about how God will be glorified. Think about it from a system approach. God gave us times, seasons, very systematic, very intentional, very structured God. So whatever it will take, whatever knowledge is required from forums such as this, or from other learning resources that are available, is for us to come and do the work in partnership with the Spirit, and of course in partnership with our people. And lastly, I just want to put this out there, again, because we are kingdom people, that as we do all this work of building businesses that are structured, as we sometimes have to pause and step back from what we've done and restructure our businesses, our processes, our frameworks, and all that. And God takes us in that place where we are more efficient and more profitable. Please let's remember that the essence, there is a purpose behind the profit. It is kingdom. It is the place where we're giving back. It is the place where we recognize that this assignment wasn't just about us, but it was literally to bless and impact humanity and for the glory to go back to God. So I'm going to anchor at this point and say thank you. I hope that this has been useful to you. And I'm always happy, to reach out and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs so that we have these conversations and challenge ourselves constantly to keep raising the bar for the kingdom of God. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and God bless you all. Thank you, Pastor Tola.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Audrey. My goodness, I can literally, and I mean that, listen to you every day. I'm telling you. I mean you. And what I love about your presentation is that it was not, theoretical at all. It was from a place of what you've worked on, what you've seen over the years. You understand? And how God has been able to help you to get to where you are now. So once again, on behalf of GLC, we say thank you to us. We are going to be going to the session of questions and answers now. And some of our questions have come in. And if you still have any question for Ms. Audrey, please send in the questions. Anchoring this session will be our executive pastor of Jesus House, Baltimore, Pastor Bumi Banjo. So I'm going to allow her to come on now, and then she'll start taking the questions. And after the questions and the answers, I'll come back on and we'll wrap up this first session. Please don't go anywhere. Pastor Leke Alder is going to come and round this up with us. And he knows his onions. He understands what branding is all about. So please don't go anywhere. Pastor B, it's time for you to come on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Tola. Thank you so much, Mrs. Joy Ezekiel, for such a powerful, phenomenal, enlightening, empowering session. Just like Pastor Tola said, I could go on and on listening to you as well as you share your wealth in the marketplace, in your own journey as an entrepreneur. Thank you so very much. I know I echo the gratitude from everybody who's a participant on this platform today. As Pastor Tola said, we have some questions that have come in, touching on the topic that Mrs. Jo Ezekiel has been taking, entrepreneurial structure and restructuring. And you can still please feel free to continue to send your questions via the chat in the platform that you're watching from. So Mrs. Jo Ezekiel, we have a few questions here that I feel are going to be very, very practical in nature. And I'm going to start with one of such. Okay, so from building from an SME to a large corporation, which you've done, this has been your experience, you must have encountered many curveballs and learning curves and issues and for you to be able to actually arrive at a position where the structure is now, sustaining itself and your journey is on to build a legacy. Can you share with us some of the mistakes that you've made, and how you've learned from them?
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I will give you an example. Wow, each time I remember this example, I'm just so grateful to God. I am a microbiologist. My first degree is in microbiology. Never mind that I'm now Madam Gas. And my husband is a medical parasitologist. So literally, two of us had no business in the energy space if it was just based on that. Mm. And when we started the business, we really didn't have a clear assignment. We just jumped in, right? It's like, oil and gas industry, let's go. And then we came in. I remember, and I mean, this is a Jesus matter, so I always like to tell I'm very authentic about the messes I made. And when we came in, the first profile we ever had, we had seen some other company profiles. We just collect a few jobs, you see this people offer this service, this other service, we combine everything together and say this is a company profile. And it was so bad, my sister, that I later found out that one of the things we listed as a service was actually a chemical. We're novices, we knew nothing. So it was just like, what are the high sounding services we see? And I can imagine then somebody who is a real industry person looking at this profile and shaking their head and saying, this was where did they come from, right? So there was that, like, not having a clear path. But we came in, and at some point we started to try to get registered within the Shell, Mobil, Elf, all the oil companies to be able to offer services. And we felt, maybe because we felt inadequate in ourselves, in a sense is what I was saying now, we decided to hire some young man who was an engineer. Now, when we decided we needed an engineer, it wasn't because we had stepped back and said, I need an engineer to do this. And that's why I talked about even looking at how my business is going, what will I need? Because that way you'll be more intentional. No, this was actually just a case of somebody had come and cried to us that, her husband is graduated, he doesn't have a job, he's very intelligent, she's the one carrying all the bills. And in that emotional stage, we're like, he's an engineer, come. Do you understand? So being there, done that, all these things I'm saying, I've made him say, you know what I'm saying. So we hired him, and the fact that he was an engineer, just immediately we assumed he knew this guy has not worked for one day, but we made him an executive director of operations, big title, felt when he goes to meetings and we say he's an executive director of operations, then he's commanding respect. Absolute nonsense. He had no experience. And we didn't even do, let's even say I need an engineer. Throw it out and interview different people and get the best. No, we didn't do that. We just ran with emotional. We didn't know anything about this guy. We didn't know anything about his value system. Why did this become a problem? Because we stopped going for the meetings now. We started to send him. Sometimes he'll come, we used to go to Lagos for this meeting. We that had no money, the little we had, we would send him. write your reports. No reports. Retire your accounts. You will not. It was just a constant conversation. Now, at some point, somebody said, "Look, there's this company that is looking for a representative, and we think you people will be good." So we said, "Okay." We didn't go for the meeting. We sent him. This young man went there and presented himself as the company, right? And then what would happen was that he was not giving reports and all that. He was now beginning to act funny. Sometimes he would show up in the office for weeks and tell us that he was networking and discussing with people, and we're paying his salary, mind you.
Wow.
Now, what happened one day, because it had now become an issue, we had to report it to the board. So this one day, he had supposedly gone to Lagos for a business deal, and he had told us he was expecting something. When it came, it was addressed to the managing director. So of course, I opened the mail, and that's where we saw that the contract for the representation was between him as a person and the company. Now, to be fair, in all innocence and with open heart, we just assumed, oh, the people made a mistake. So we sent them a fax. Those were the days of faxing to say, oh, thank you, we've received the contract, but you made a mistake. You didn't put our company name, you put, and they replied to say, no, they are not transacting with us. He came back, they started yelling at myself and my husband, how dare we open his personal mail? Wow,
because he's the MD.
So we had given him too much free. He wasn't the MD, but that's what we asked him, that you're not
in his mind.
Yeah, there was nothing in place to there was no we had no frameworks. All we knew is he's an engineer, just go. And then he ended up, those people refused to back away. They signed up with him, even though the business, of course, something happened along the line and they fell out with him and withdrew it. But that for us would have been a game changer, right? But that came from not having those clear responses, even how you hire. Who are you hiring? There was no recruitment process, nothing to say, this is how we filter people, nothing. It was a lot of emotional issues. That's one big example. But God is wise, right? So he takes our mistakes. God has always told me that, Audrey, I'll redirect your errors. So even the things we thought were mistakes, we thank God. Because maybe if they had given it to us, we'll still be in Port Harcourt now and we'll not be doing what we're doing. So who knows? That's one. Secondly, I remember that at some point I had this HR person, and I think that somehow, because each time this lady would present to me, honestly, she was always talking about the staff in a very positive light, always talking about how we can grow them, build them. And I realized that later, reflecting on this, maybe I should have paid a little attention to some of the niggling sense, because my instincts are very strong. But in this case, because it was always being presented as something positive, I ignored this, and I shouldn't have. And we hadn't yet put in place a 360 performance appraisal system. So it was still that traditional top-down appraisal. What I found out later was that this woman was literally terrorizing the staff. And I mean in a major way, to the degree of the kind of language she used with them, language I would never use, insulting F words, those kinds of things, nothing representing brand me. And because she reported directly to me and she had created this sense that nobody else could come to me, nobody could talk about it. But, when I started to sense, okay, we need to change this and we put that in place, the results that came out didn't look anything. So that was it. So that putting that in place, very important. As entrepreneurs, we have to be careful because people are always trying to game us. Everybody wants to, there's a lot of politicking, everybody wants to be your guy, your girl, you want to be in your good corner, so to speak. So we must be mindful to test the system, because if we create too many layers between us and our people, these types of things could happen. Ultimately, of course, when I got the report and I tested it and I told them to be tried, let her go immediately. Some organizations don't do that because the person is in senior leadership, right? They would have said, you can't lose. It's not easy to recruit at that level. But for me, my personal integrity was key, that the policy said this, and at any level, that's what would apply. And so she had to go. But when I look back, I do feel that I dropped the ball on that. If I paid more attention, and we've been talking about this 360 for a while, so I think it was one of those delayed actions that now cost me greatly. And it took years to rebuild trust in my people, where they didn't feel I was that person that she had given them the sense that I was, right? So there's that. Lastly, as an example, is just in terms of maybe the business line now, that we had one experience where we had a business we wanted to do, and we were trying too hard to do it within the ambit of the resources we already had. What it was a new line, and literally stepping back and saying, what were you thinking? I mean, these people this was strange to them, and they were already busy with what they were doing. It would have made sense to resource that role from the beginning and think of that not as a cost to the business, but as an investment to a possible future opportunity. But we didn't do that. We were just looking at how much, it will be too expensive, and let's just try and do it by ourselves. Ultimately, that thing cost us like $500 million in a loss. That was not funny. And at the end of the day, I said to myself that probably the payroll of the person who could have had the capacity to ensure that did not happen might have been a fifth of that, Wow. And so the recovery, of course, we've done the recovery now, but it was a hard lesson. And sometimes I sit back and I imagine, I don't know if you know how much the dollar rate is now. I sit back and I imagine sometimes that, wow, assuming we had even bought dollars with that money, I'd have been in the Bahamas by now.
We learn, we live and we learn.
Yes,
and thank you so very, very much, Mrs. Joy-Ezigbo. You were just going all over the questions that some of our attendees have asked, because somebody asked the question and said trust is an issue for both small and large organizations, and they were wondering, how do you tackle this as a young entrepreneur when you're hiring talent? I think you've touched on it, but maybe you just want to say one or two things.
Yes. So that's such a real question, because the world we're in, the value system is grossly eroded, and this has been so for a while, more so now. I think that the devil is very busy, and the psyche people is very, very busy, but because he knows his time is coming to an end anyway. So it's really hard, but not impossible. I feel that what you put out gravitates more towards you. And that has been my experience. I'm not saying that I've had a seamless HR people experience in this 28 years, not so. I've had some hard knocks. But guess what? In this period, I've had people that have worked for me for 22 years. I've had people that have worked for me for 16, and I've had those that stayed 3 months and didn't even, they just collected salary and disappeared, and at different levels for that matter. So, but when you are a young business, you must be able to trust that you have good people. And it starts from when you're hiring. So how do you hire? Right? We stopped hiring directly and started to go through recruiters. They look like an add-on cost, but they do a lot more filtering. So that by the time the last batch are coming to you, I think I'm dealing with the crop, the cream of the crop. And they were now testing for technical skills are, to me, honestly, well, depending on the role, a lot of the time the technical skills that are given recruiters would have tested that. So when we interview, our interviews don't really start with, we always tell, the first thing we tell in an interview is tell us about yourself and describe yourself in the essence of who you are, nothing to do with your CV. I don't want to hear where you went to school. I don't want to hear anything about your work experience, because those things are great, but I'm going to work with the person. And we get into a conversation. Yes, where are you coming from? What's your vision for life? What do you think about, even as simple as what do you think about what's going on in Ukraine? Just things you're trying to test, you're listening for things. And people, when they now get into that relaxed mode, people drop the strangest things on you. Somebody has in an interview, actually, did you even know when she said it? When, that's why I now just removed like 3 years from my CV.
Oops.
Just on my age. I was like, oops, I'm like, and we don't recruit in a hurry. Then we also do personality assessment tests. We use, the different things you can use to do that, because we want to get a sense of the person. We're going to work with people. Do these things all mean 100%? No, but they kind of reduce that possibility.
Right. Yes.
Now, the second thing is this. Let me just put it out there that unfortunately, and this is so sad, if your only criteria is that the person is born again and goes to your church, you'll be shocked. All that. Fortunately, this is our truth. So you still do the science of it, please. We're not all to the church or the hospital, so many people there are still under treatment. So we don't just assume.
And that is true.
Yeah, so that's also important. And we wear all these filters, we make mistakes, and then make mistakes that we say everybody can be trusted. It's not true. Now, when you now bring people, you spend a lot of time sharing the mission, the vision, what is driving us, what are we trying to do, where are we going, what do we want, how do we want to work with you? And then we attach, where we can, a mentor, usually someone more tested. You may not be able to attach a mentor if you're a young business, but you could also have friends that come in. Years back, I used to go, I had some friends running smaller organizations that would always call me to have sessions with their people. And I would speak to their people around, how do you situate yourself in the vision of this company? Because sometimes hearing it from an outsider, they accept it more than this person. I also think that it's important with how we treat our people. We must respect people. Everybody is God valued. Everybody is the head of household somewhere, a human being on assignment. When you have that whole respectful, honoring thing around your people, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. At least even if there are 10, all 10 of them can't decide to just, no, there will be one person that will be calling and saying, no, not this, my madam. No, let's not do that. Right? It's not a perfect, because this is the world we're in. But I think when you're a bit more grounded about how you bring them in, who you are bringing in, how you engage them, and you can show people that I value you. So, my husband, for instance, would always tell people, listen, you could be the CEO of this organization. And, maybe some people will just like, yeah, right. But guess what? I've had someone that came in as just front desk that ended up as my HR manager. So we have those live cases to say, okay, this person came in as that, look where we are today. And people trust that. The other thing is, one of the reasons why people perhaps don't trust is the way we ourselves behave. Check your conduct. Check your conduct. If you're coming with this, I'm the boss forever, and people don't, excuse me, moving on, right? And then lastly, I would say that thing I said about the organization structure from a human perspective, your organogram today, how do I see myself? Because there are a lot of owner-managed businesses where, unless you're a family member, you can't get past a certain place. When people come into that kind of a system, there's no sense of ownership. And that means that, if there are places where they can game the system, they may do that. But when they can see a growth trajectory, you have a proper salary scale, even if you're still struggling to pay that salaries, you've created the trusting God, this is how it's going to work. People can see that you're planning for their growth, right? It's easier. For them to say, okay, let me settle in. Yeah. Now, the only caveat I have to all this is that we also have a new generational issue, which is that we have a crop of young people whose context, I always tell people, don't be telling me, they are not, they don't know how to stay. There's some negative connotations towards the way young people live. And I say this, no, it's not negative. It is that their context is totally different. It's totally different. So they are not hanging in there for 30 years with you. They give you 3 months, they give you 6 months, they give you 1 year, and to them, they have served. And that's their context. And some companies have learned how to mine that so that it's an ever-evolving, shifting pool. And if you have your SOPs for each position, you don't feel it as much. Or you decide that, okay, for some strategic positions, I don't want anyone over 35 because I need stability. There's a way to do these things, right? And once once you get past that sense of, they just leave, they just take my idea and leave because that's what you see. It may not be that. It may just be that you're dealing with younger people who what is driving them is different from what is driving you.
Wow,
right?
wow.
I trust God. I trust God. I tell God that, you know what, Lord, I'm doing this work with you. And because I'm doing it with you, and because I'm trying to intentionally build structure, I'm trying to intentionally make my people know I value and honor them. I cannot do this without them. Then no matter who hurts me or hurts the business and leaves, you will bring better. You own the 7 million.
I love that. You will bring better. You will bring better. Wow, where did time go? I think we just have about 3-4 minutes left. Let's see if we can get maybe like 2 questions into that before we wrap up the Q&A session. You talked about value, and that just ties me into the next question. Somebody asked, what elements are necessary to translate shared assumptions within an organization into a shared culture? How we do things, our norms and our values within this organization. How do you translate that and communicate it to your staff?
So again, it's a whole exercise. It's a whole exercise. And usually, if you can, I would always encourage, if you have a proper HR department, they can champion this. If not, get the consultants that partner with you. We have a lot of organizations that work with people to do this. Well, I love that word, shared assumptions, because that's the assumption that operates within a system, especially where there is no structure. You'll be amazed the things people just, and it becomes almost like dogma.
That's right.
So by the time you as a CEO hear some things, you'll be like, sorry. So, but we want to build culture. At the very early stages where maybe you have a very small team, they are less than 10, you are the one that is the champion. You set the pace. You are always speaking to the issues, and you are celebrating when people align. I think this is the thing that we may sometimes miss. Or you create a reward system, and rewards at that level have nothing to do with I give a financial reward. It could just be that, you know, everybody's screensaver that day is my picture, employee of the month, or well done, great job. You write a commendation letter, call them out, they take a picture with madam, you know, and you get to show that. Yes, you know, you're going on
bragging rights, bragging rights.
Yeah, things that make people feel good, and you're telling them, and what you are celebrating is that you did this. I love it. Right? Many years ago, for instance, he's late now. There was a driver, his name was Enunu. But Enunu got so involved with the engineers that they used to call him driver engineer. Wow. And he got to the point where he started to understand some of the little things like tightening of the knots on a valve pit, that they started to send him on those assignments. The first time he saw something, a bit of a leakage, I think he sensed there was a leakage and went by himself, tightened it first, then reported it. We had a huge commendation ceremony around him, a driver. So there are some of those things that you do, and you're setting the tone so people know that truly this thing they're saying about we value our people, that you are saying it. But as you grow bigger and bigger, you can't always be in the doing. You just make sure that your culture, the way you interact with your staff, respect, you greet people, you engage. When you have meetings, you let them speak, you're not interrupting, you're not afraid to say, look, I don't know this, can you explain? I'd like to get your views. People feel engaged. Yeah. But you want to filter it down is, again, you have to put the policies in place. You have to do the change management that is involved, and let it be something that is continuously, we're looking at it constantly to say, are we all on the same page? Set up your town halls, employee town halls, and don't attend, let them talk.
Wow, wow. Yeah, so let me go into this question, Mrs. Joy-Ezigbo. That was powerful, because that leads me into perhaps the final question we'll be able to take in this session. That was powerful. So somebody is asking, because you talked about organizational change management, right? And somebody said, how and when do you communicate organizational changes across all internal, that is your leaders, your employees, system, and external system as well, such as like your stakeholders and your clients? How do you communicate, and when do you communicate? Yes.
Right. So the communication happens at different stages. I think at the beginning, when you're trying to figure out what even needs to be done, you engage at the senior leadership level mostly, because we're just discussing the very strategic issues. But of course, when we want to drill down a bit more, you have to engage with everybody so that as early as possible, people know we're looking at the business. But by the time you have walked through and agreed, this is exactly what we're changing, this is the strategy to implement, you must have a town hall and do that deep dive. Because the way you would explain that to the head of your operations, they will internalize it differently from your head of logistics, who is just a you work for your senior driver.
Mhm.
So that is important, and especially where people are impacted, right? So there are different phases of the communication. And if you're going to let anyone go in the process, oh wow, as early as possible, that communication must happen. They don't want to find out after it's done because people will be afraid and uncertain, and they will not trust any other thing you're saying, especially if you mistakenly announced at the beginning that I promise you no one will be going.
Wow.
So even how you communicate, what you communicate, you have to be very careful, because if you can't really see the end yet, be careful what you're promising at the beginning.
Wow. So uncertainty is not a conducive environment.
No.
Thank you so very much. We wish we could take all the questions. We do have more questions, and we probably will be reaching out to you if you'll be gracious to please answer those questions for us. We will endeavor to put them on the GLC website so that people can refer back to those questions and the answers that go with them. We thank you again, Mrs. Audrey Joy-Ezigbo, for your time, for your knowledge share. It's been pretty powerful and transforming. Thank you so very, very much. I see Pastor Tola is already there to take over. I just wanted to mention to everybody to please keep in mind to kindly sign up for the GLC newsletter so that you can get updates for upcoming events. There is a QR code that's currently on your screen. If you please get that QR code into your phone, and it's going to release to you the form you will need to complete to sign up for the newsletter. Thank you again to everybody, and we appreciate you.
Thank you once again, Mrs. Joy-Ezigbo. We have been blessed today, and I pray that God will continue to give you more grace and empower you more in Jesus' name. So I regards to your family and everybody, and very soon I'm sure we're going to have a one-on-one chat, face-to-face, very soon. Once again, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. We're going to go into session of break right now. And after the break, we have some videos that will be going on while we're on break. And after the break, Pastor Leke Alder is going to join us, and we're going to wrap up this year's GLC. Please don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. God bless you.
Too often, we drift from one action to another without thinking about the choices we have made. In fact, our direction seems normal that we don't even realize we have made a choice that has significant consequences. The book Line Crossers by Pastor Tola Odutola is a book that helps you find wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strides of hope and confidence. To get a copy of this book, simply visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order and watch yourself cross over into your victory. Conference materials such as audio and video recordings of this conference can be purchased in the GLC website at www.greatleadership.net. A short survey will be available during the conference via a link that will be posted in the chat section of this live stream. Kindly complete this survey. It is easy to become complacent with life. The hurtful backgrounds, failed dreams, and scars from your past gives one excuses for having no expectations in life. However, in the book, I Am Better Than This, Pastor Tola Odutola inspires readers to relentlessly pursue a better future despite the challenges that will surely arise. To get a copy of this life transforming book, kindly visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order.
Thank you for being a part of this year's conference. Your voluntary contributions towards GLC can be made at any of the following platforms. God bless you. For our African viewers, please use Zenith Bank PLC Nigeria Elroy Media account number 101-767-5913. For North American and all other viewers, please use www.alphaleadershipconference.net/donate. If you would like to text to give, please use 1-844-503-6946, option 15, ALC. For Zelle donations, please use account@jesushousebaltimore.org. To give via Cash App, please use $ Jesus House Balt. To give via PayPal, Jesus House Baltimore. And to give via website, www.jesushousebaltimore.org/give.
Whoa, Mrs. R.G. Joazigbo, simply an impactful session on entrepreneurial structure and restructuring. Conference materials such as audio and video recordings of this conference can be purchased on the GLC website at www.greatleadership.net. A short survey will be available during the conference via a link that will be posted in the chat section of this live stream. Kindly complete this survey. Our next speaker is Mr. Leke Alder. He will be teaching on building structure and restructuring your brand.
Too often, we drift from one action to another without thinking about the choices we have made. In fact, our direction seems normal that we don't even realize we have made a choice that has significant consequences. The book Line Crossers by Pastor Tola Odutola is a book that helps you find wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strides of hope and confidence. To get a copy of this book, simply visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order and watch yourself cross over into your victory. Conference materials such as audio and video recordings of this conference can be purchased in the GLC website at www.greatleadership.net. A short survey will be available during the conference via a link that will be posted in the chat section of this live stream. Kindly complete this survey.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your break. You stretched, you're recharged and ready for the last session of the day. Before we head into our last session, just a few announcements. If you're joining us for this session, welcome once again to you. We do have a newsletter that will allow you to stay up to date on all things GLC. A QR code will be placed on the screen, or you can visit greatleadership.net to stay up to date with our newsletter and any questions you might have missed during this year's conference. We also have audio and visual ready for you. If you'd like to replay this year's sessions, re-listen to our speakers, we will have that available for you for purchase on alphaleadership.net/survey, /shop, my apologies. Next, we do ask that you donate to this year's conference. It has been such a blessing to each and every single one of us. So if you can, please donate using the information that's being shown on the screen. We have many ways, many platforms to give, and you can use the QR codes that are being shown on the screen to donate. In the spirit of structure and restructuring, we do have a survey for you to complete. It's a brief survey, about 5 minutes, that will help us help you for future GLC conferences to come. So if you could take a moment, fill out the survey, let us know your thoughts, and we promise to implement them and give you a better experience next year. Now, again, in that same light of structure and restructuring, we've spoken on structure and restructuring in life, in ministries, and business, and many more. Structuring and restructuring of the mind is also equally important. And we have 2 books that will help aid in that journey: Line Crossers and I Am Better Than This. Both books available for purchase on the Alpha Leadership Conference website, written by our convener of this very conference, Pastor Tola Udutola. Again, those 2 books, I Am Better Than This and Line Crossers. Now, if you would like to also follow our pastor on Instagram and Twitter, you can follow him at Pastor Tola Udutola on Instagram, and on Twitter at Pastor Tola. We do have the dates for our next year conference, Bigger and Better Next Year, right? GLC 2023, September 22nd and 23rd. We want you guys to get those dates locked in to your calendars now, as we will be here once again, 2023, September 22nd and September 23rd. Without further ado, I'll make welcome Pastor Tola, who will introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zanita. Pastor Leke, how are you? How are you doing? And it's good to see you. And everybody, thank you once again for holding forth. This is the last session, of this conference. And I believe very strongly that God usually saves the best for the last. Our speaker is someone that we've gotten used to him now. He's been speaking for a while. And this year is no exception. And we are expectant. And because each time you come, you always drop something that, it take a while before people, grasp it and really get running with it. And you've always been a blessing. So once again, we appreciate you for accepting to speak, for us again this year. We have an intro for you. And after the intro, you just take over from there. And then we'll see you after your presentation for questions and answers. Once again, thank you so much for accepting to be part of this conference.
Mr. Leke Alder is the founder and principal of Alder Consulting, Nigeria's leading creative intelligence firm with offices in both Lagos and London. He is credited with introducing branding as a discipline to Nigeria and has consulted on policy, politics, and business at the highest levels, both locally and internationally. He has consulted on policy formulation for the federal government of Nigeria and the federal ministries of information and communication, education, foreign affairs, and solid minerals development, among others. He is the author of several books and was the host of a weekly radio business program, Minding Your Business with Leke Alder on 92.3 Inspiration FM in Lagos, Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Great Leadership Conference, Mr. Leke Alder.
You need to unmute yourself.
Well, good evening, everyone from Nigeria here. Am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Good evening, everyone from Nigeria. Can you hear me, please?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, we can. We can. Go ahead. Just go ahead. We're good.
Okay. It's going to be a blessed time. Pastor Tola, I want to thank you once more for inviting me to speak. You've elevated me to the position of pastor. You know, I don't feel like qualified to be a pastor, you know, but I know it's an argument we're going to keep on having, you know. So I'm not going to attend your church so that you don't make me pastor. Okay, let me thank Pastor Tola Odutola for inviting me once more to speak at this annual seminar. It's an honor to be invited to speak and to share experiences and knowledge, and that's what I'm going to be sharing today. Because the profile of the people that I attended this conference is a bit wide, I'm going to speak at the higher level and at the lower level. And I'm going to address SMEs in particular so that they will know, you know, what to do in certain situations. Today, we're going to be looking at structure. We shall also be looking at branding. Now, our topic of deliberation is building structure and restructuring your brand. To be honest, it's hard to accommodate the two within a framework, especially within the amount of time that is allotted to this lecture. You know, if I talk about branding, we can be here till tomorrow. But to be honest, it's hard to put them together. In management science, the two are hardly ever linked. And I shall, however, be attempting to the equivalence of a modern miracle by showing the logical linkage between the two. So let's begin. Now, the first thing that you need to note about restructuring or structuring a business is that it is an imperative. Whether you run an organization, whether you run a church, whether you run an SME, whether you run a corporate, it's an imperative. It is not optional. Structuring goes to the very heart of the blueprint of the organization. It determines success, codifies failure, and regulates growth. Now, simplicity, structuring has to do, and I'm trying to define it now, structuring has to do with the clear definition of roles within an organization, the integration of the parts into a cohesive whole so that the organization can deal on a set of objectives efficiently. And now let me take that again. Structure in simplicity has to do with the clear definition of roles within an organization. So there's clear definition of roles, the integration of the parts into a cohesive whole so that the organization can deliver on a set of objectives efficiently. So there's a focus, there's a reason why you structure your organization. It's not structuring for the sake of structuring, it's so that you can deliver on a set of objectives efficiently. Now, that statement, however, assumes what I call unification of the fundamentals. But to help you understand it, think of the Federal Republic of Nigeria or a federal republic. The federating states must have binding fundamentals. There must be an agreement on concepts and principles. Without it, they cannot properly federate. Let me illustrate with a bit of my personal history, and I want to bring in some anecdotal evidence so that we can relate to what I'm saying. And I want to go back into history, my personal history, so that you see what I've been through. Now, in the year 2000, that's 22 years ago, I fell terribly ill. All the consulting was younger at this time, and the staffing was even younger. The company was, as the Bible will say, inchoate. Now, I had a minor surgery and an appendectomy, which did go well. I was scheduled to leave the hospital within the week, but then another ailment came calling. Diseases often do that. A lesser disease often serves as John the Baptist to a more virulent disease. heralding the dawn of a new regime of sickness. So that was the situation I was in. The only problem was we were now dealing with a ghost disease. The doctors and specialists couldn't define it. They couldn't agree among themselves. They battled over my diagnosis, despite the copious amount of blood drawn for tests and analysis. Those doctors drew more blood from me than their ruler. I will end up spending about 3 months in that hospital. And I was so ill, I sent an instruction to my lawyer to prepare my will. Now, in search of therapeutic amelioration, I packed a bag and decided to travel the world. I needed to rest my soul. I traveled to London, and then from London, I flew to Rome. I recall vividly that my hotel in Rome was on the street where the police department located, that dedicated to the mafia was located. But I didn't meet any godfather, so I went to the Vatican and I didn't meet the Pope either. While I was in Rome, my best friend called me from Spain. He's a medical doctor and was vacationing in Spain. I flew to Alicante, spent a few days with him. Then from Alicante, I flew to Bilbao to appreciate the constructivist architectural masterpiece by Frank Gehry, the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. From there, I left for Barcelona. Then I flew to Athens, moved to Venice, freighted myself to Milan. I don't know how I did it, but I somehow found myself at the beach hotel in Accra, Ghana. I found the waves of the sea very soothing, especially at night. From there, I flew to Senegal. I used Senegal as a launch pad to Cape Verde, and in Cape Verde, I fell terribly ill again and flew straight to Lagos. And from Lagos Airport, I drove straight into the hospital. I was so ill, I never thought I would return to the company, to all the consulting. I didn't work for an entire year. I just couldn't. Now, I didn't tell you all these things because I want to show you that I'm, Gulliver's Travels or I'm Journey Just Come. Here is a miracle, and that's where I'm leading you to. The point I'm trying to make is that all that consulting survived despite my absence. I spent a year out of the company, but the company survived despite my absence. And mind you, the people that were running the company were very, very young. They were in their 20s. I think the oldest must have been 25 or 26. The company survived for 6 reasons, and I want you to note this down. I will make the lecture available to you, so pay attention to what I'm saying, but listen to what I'm saying very well so that you can learn from it. Number 1, I wasn't the sole signatory to the account. There were 2 or 3 other signatories to the account, number 1. Number 2, we worked out a collegial system for handling briefs. Not one person can handle a brief. So many people handle a brief. So many people bring their perspectives, to a brief. Number 3, I was not the sole face of the organization. Number 4, the enterprise wasn't domiciled in me. There are many entrepreneurs that the enterprise is domiciled in them. Number 5, everyone's role and function was well defined. Number 6, and the last one, the company had a defined set of values and a corporate philosophy that we all subscribe to, the ethos of the firm. Now, without a proper structure, the organization couldn't have survived. There was, of course, the grace of God, but we consultants don't talk about God. We focus on reason and logic. Grace is illogical, so we don't talk about it. Now, from the story I just told you, we can take out a number of lessons. There's a mindset configuration those who lead organizations ought to have. You have to have this configuration for your mindset. It doesn't matter if the organization is a business, a church, or an NGO, you must be mindful of the following. And I'm going to list those following things, okay? Number 1, there is something called key man risk in business or in the church or in an organization. The scriptural principle relating to this is strike the shepherd and scatter the sheep. There's key man risk. If without you, the system cannot survive and the organization will go down if you're not there. You must work towards eliminating key man risk. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have your role to play as a founder of the organization or as the most talented person in the organization. It's just that if we eliminate you, the company can still go. They may not function in your office or in your capacity, but the company can still function. Key man risk is particularly prevalent in African organizations. Hardly do you have businesses that survive the demise of the founder. If you want your organization to survive, you don't be the Alpha and the Omega. I mean, that title is reserved for God. Don't be the great I am. Just be the great I'm not. Therefore, when you are structuring an organization, have a future for the future, have a future that there's a possibility that you may not be there and the company has to survive or the organization has to survive. Number two, second lesson, a leader must not be a bottleneck in his own organization. You're a bottleneck if nothing can be done without your approval, if you have to sign off on everything, vet everything. Since the efficiency of a system is determined by the inefficiencies of bottlenecks within an organization. Now that sounds like big grammar. Let me break it down. In any organization, there are what we call bottlenecks. A necessary bottleneck is accounting. The accountant just doesn't sign off on everything. He examines things, and then there's an invoice methodology, there's an approval methodology. So that's a necessary bottleneck. There are what we call unnecessary bottlenecks, and you find that in the civil service, especially in Nigeria, where some people have erected toll gates and everything. It's an unnecessary bottleneck. Now, the efficiency of the system, the totality of the system, is determined by the inefficiency at the bottleneck. So if the organization can do something ordinarily in 4 days, and the bottleneck display delays it by 2 days, the efficiency of that organization, of your organization, will be determined by the 2 extra days that has been added because of an unnecessary bottleneck. So necessary bottlenecks include quality control, accounting systems, but if the leader, and you get this a lot, if the leader is an unnecessary bottleneck, the organization can only go as fast as it treats issues. So things only go as fast as its in-trade moves or its out-trade moves. A bottleneck, if you think of a bottleneck, just think of Coca-Cola as a bottleneck. The fluid is pouring out at a particular rate until it gets to that bottleneck and then it slows down. Therefore, the efficiency of an organization in total is determined by the inefficiencies at the bottleneck. Okay, I hope you got that. If you don't get it, I'll explain during question and answer, but I think it's pretty easy to get, okay? The leader, if it's the bottleneck, owns the entire system with a space, walls, and this is where culture comes in. A terrible culture will emerge within such a system. A psychopathic culture develops. There'll be spies reporting on everybody in the organization. Local leadership will be undermined. Now, you may think that that is far-fetched, but we were consulting for an organization, a bank, and what happened was that the leader was so insecure that at 6 o'clock, which is the closing time, or at 5 o'clock, you see a line of people that, sitting in his conference room, in his waiting room. All of them are waiting to give him information on what the head of the department did, what this person did, what this person said. Well, without a doubt, very soon the organization collapsed. So a psychopathic culture develops when you don't take cognizance of structuring. There will be spies reporting on everybody in the organization. Local leadership will be undermined. Number 3, it is wise to encourage teamwork in your organization. The more silos exist in your organization, the less effective the system is. I'll tell you a story because I really want you to get these things and remember this story. So I'm trying to, tell the parables of Jesus and be like Jesus. He was using case studies, business case studies. So I'm using my own case studies to be like Jesus, okay? Now, as a young lawyer, I was saddled with a case of a delinquent loan transaction with one of our clients, a bank belonging to the southwestern states of Nigeria. Now, I needed documentation to build my case. Please, I used to be a lawyer, so I think I practiced law for 1 or 2 years, youth corps, and 1 year, and I decided that law was too boring for me. So I used to be a lawyer, okay? I needed documentation to build my case, so I went to the corporate headquarters. The building had 4 floors. I soon discovered that each floor was dedicated to a tribe. Each floor was an ethnic conclave, 1 ethnic group per floor. This is reality, I'm telling you. Now, the Ekits occupied 1 floor, the Jeshas occupied another floor, the Ondo another floor, the Oyo another floor. Each floor was manned by a general manager who refused to employ from outside his ethnicity. The loan documents were lost in the labyrinth of organizational ignorance and ethnic short-sightedness. The floors refused to work together. Why? Because they were like Nigeria, it's just that they were all concentrated in southwestern Nigeria. I had to go to the court archives, lock myself in there to build a case on the filings of the defendant. Teamwork matters. Eliminate silos in your organization. There are those that are always trying to show that they are the stars. You need to get them to align. Your name is not Ronaldo. Even Ronaldo relies on teamwork. So teamwork matters. Number 4. you have to develop a management system. Leadership is not the same as management. This is something that confuses a lot of people. Management does not rely on aura or persuasive skills. In fact, a good manager may be absolutely boring, but he or she understands the system, abides by the system, follows procedure, is regulated by the system. His latitude or her latitude is within the ambit of the system. The regulatory protocol of a system can be as simple as no letter goes out without a secondary signatory. It can be as simple as that. The instruction, as basic as it is at the heart of an ethics case that is threatening to drown the reputation of a leading law firm in Nigeria now. Management is about proper function, risk management, and efficiency. It is not about aspiration, it's not about inspiration. How do we make this work in a predictable and consistent manner is the essence of management. Let me repeat that. How do we make this work in a predictable and consistent manner is the essence of management. You don't need to know anybody. The system is working. That's what management is all about. Number 5, clearly define the spiritual dimensions of your organization. What do I mean by spiritual dimensions? I mean vision, mission, values, culture, philosophy, or ideology of the organization. Successful countries have what you call spiritual dimensions. They deal with conceptual, they have a conceptual focus. Unsuccessful countries don't have any conceptual focus, but successful companies also tend to deal with the spiritual dimensions are well defined. So your values must be well defined, your culture must be spelled out, your philosophy and ideology must be spelled out, the mission must be spelled out, the vision must be set out. In consulting circles, by the way, values are known as quote and unquote soft issues. But history shows that they are not soft issues at all, but that they are very hard issues that are wearing velvet gloves. If you violate ethical values, for instance, your organization may be at risk. If you doubt, read a few corporate obituaries like Enron and Arthur Andersen. They didn't go down because of lack of strategy. They were killed by so-called soft issues, not want of strategy. These were brain boxes who still went down. Why? The values were bad. The values were poorly executed. The values were not well defined, and the organization collapsed. And I have so many case studies like that. I've seen a bank go down in exactly 1 week because of lack of values. Number 6, build your brand into a factor of production. Build your brand into a factor of production. This is a linkage to branding. The factors of production in classical economics are land, labor, enterprise, and capital. I don't know if you still remember your economics 101. Proper branding will draw attention to the products of your organization. You'll be less reliant on human intervention or propagation. I recall a particular year at Alder Consulting, we had employed 7 new associates, fresh graduates. We asked them to open a salary account, and all of them, without exception, chose a particular bank. They were not marketed by the bank. They just trooped to the bank. That's what good branding does. Good branding reduces the cost of marketing. It works as a factor of production. So while the other banks were selling marketing officers out to get people, these people, the cost was transferred back to the customer who went to the bank themselves to open this bank account. So I want to look at something now. I want to look at something. I want to look at what you call the imperatives of leadership. Okay. Now there are 4 imperatives of leadership. And again, by the time we start getting to the end, I'll give you another anecdotal evidence. Let me share with you the imperatives of leadership. These are the things a good leader should be mindful of. Number 1, biodegradability. I repeat that, biodegradability. A good leader recognizes it's a biodegradable entity. What does that mean in English? It simply means that with time, your strength and your energy reduce. So will your emotional capacity. So your strength reduces, your energy reduces, your emotional capacity reduces. It's the reason why last ones are spoiled, but firstborns tend to be super disciplined. Jacob called his firstborn the strength of my youth. It's because he had physical, emotional, and mental strength to bring him up. The same principle applies to running an organization. In your late 50s and 60s and 70s, you are going to become tired emotionally, especially if you work in Nigeria. You are going to be drained. You fought too many battles. You just want to rest. You want to coast along and reward yourself. Moses in his younger days was a Fidel Castro. At 40, he was full of revolutionary zeal. That zeal had petered down at the age of 80. The confident revolutionary had become a reluctant nationalist. Mandela at 40 was not Mandela at 80 either. He smartly served one term before handing over to the younger generation. You get tired, whether you like it or not. And it can only be easier if you've groomed younger leaders and built management. They will pick up your lapses. Therefore, strength is inversely proportional to the arrow of time. Now you can depict that in an equation as x in brackets alpha 1 over y, 1/y. We can also express it as strength equals to k/arrow of time, where k is constant. But the point being made is that as the years go by, your strength reduces. Number 2, the imperatives of leadership. Generational impetus. A good leader recognizes the generational impetus. What does that mean? Whether you like it or not, a new generation takes over the critical sectors of the economic and political spaces. These are facts. As time goes on, there are meetings you won't be able to attend as a leader. It is either you are too old for such meetings or your profile is too high. You'll be age inappropriate. And there'll be meetings you can't go without a younger executive in tow. I remember a meeting we convened at Aso Rock Villa in Nigeria. Aso Rock Villa is the White House of Nigeria. And we were handling the Brand Nigeria project. And we convened a meeting at the villa. Now, seated around the table were a generational breed of bank executives. We had invited bank CEOs. They were mostly in their 40s, early 40s, middle 40s. But there was an age inappropriate executive at that meeting. He was in his early 70s. And he was the chairman of his bank. He insisted on attending the meeting. And everyone wondered why he came. It was just like a fish, he just stood out. It was too old for the language being used at the meeting, the ideas being shared, the issues being discussed. The people seated around the table were junior officers when he was CEO. It was too old for the participants around the table. It gets worse if you're a legend in your field. There are meetings legends don't go, they send their representatives. So let me go to the third imperative of leadership now. Remember, there are 4. The first one I told you was, let me go back so that you can see it, biodegradability. The second one is generational impetus. The third one is spiritual totemism. A good leader over time becomes the spiritual totem of his organization. I repeat, a good leader over time becomes the spiritual totem of the organization. And I'm not talking about praying, in tongues or any of those things here. That's not the way we consultants use spiritual. We use spiritual for the intangible, the things that the guiding philosophy, the things that we can't hold, but which coordinate the organization and control the organization. Now, there are 4 or 5 stages in the evolution of leadership. And you are going to experience this as time goes on. Even with right now, you can locate yourself where you are. The first one is the leader as manager of an idea. So you are the one with the idea for the organization. You just started the company. So you are the manager of the idea. You are managing the idea. You are putting together PHR. You are putting together resources and all those things to get the idea going. So that's the first evolution that you have. You are the leader or manager. I don't care what kind of company it is. I don't care whether it's a $400 billion company or whatever. You start as a manager of an idea. Then number 2, the leader as a manager of men. Now you brought in the HR people. Now you need to manage them so that they adhere to the objectives of the organization and they're able to do their work effectively. Number 3, the leader as a manager of systems. Now you put systems in place in the organization and you're managing the systems rather than managing men. Because if you try to manage men, as the organization grows, that becomes impossible. Try and managing 400 people at the same time. You can't do that. So you manage systems. There's an HR system. There's a technological system. There's strategy. There's all those things. That's what you manage as a leader. Then number 4, the leader as a manager of spirituality. And number 5, the leader as manager of the political. I'll talk a little bit about this. Let me repeat my explanation. At the beginning of the enterprise, your role as a leader is the development of the product or idea of the organization. At this stage, you assume many roles. Structure is primitive, and relatively small. Indeed, everyone takes on dual roles in the organization. As the business or organization develops, however, you must shift, and this is important, it's an imperative. You must shift from managing the idea or enterprise to the management of men and women. You develop skill-based leadership. This will constitute management or qualify for management in the future. So you concentrate on developing men, managerial capacity in men. As these leaders emerge and develop, you should begin to concentrate on managing systems. A typical organizational system includes strategy, customer service, product development, brand development. The executives you develop will be fairly competent at what they do. And so what you are looking for is a seamless integration of the structures and processes to deliver on the vision of the organization. I repeat, what you're looking for at this stage is a seamless integration of structures and processes to deliver on the vision. Now, with time, you'll emerge as a spiritual totem of the organization. By mean, I don't mean you become prayer warrior or any of such thing. You don't need to be a prayer warrior to succeed in business. There are many non-prayer warriors who succeed in business. So that's not what I'm talking about. And I'm not against prayers either, please. By this time, the spiritual dimensions of an organization, the vision, the mission, the values, and the culture, you become the guardian of those things. You are less involved in day-to-day management. You're also taking on a mentoring role as well. Your contribution is more about wisdom rather than strategy. Indeed, many leaders leave the organization at this stage. Remember, Jeff Bezos left Amazon, to help to go and do more experimental stuff, something that will challenge him. And you see Bill Gates doing the same thing. He went to manage his foundation. The last stage is your political evolution. That's a height of leadership. Now you manage at this level, very high level contacts. You have a Rolodex of the most important people in the country and beyond. Because of you, 6 degrees of separation becomes 2 degrees of separation. So the managers need to contact somebody and it's a high level official or something. And so let's call Mr. Alder, he should know the person. And I call the person and I say, we'd like to do this. He won't talk to any other person because it's me. He will talk to me because I have the profile to engage him. You protect the enterprise politically because in some countries like Nigeria, you may go to bed as a furniture seller and wake up and your business has been banned. So you need to protect your organization politically. This is something that a lot of people don't do. They don't know that they need to protect their organization politically. Once your organization is making insane money or there's undue attention of your organization, you need to protect your organization politically. Golf becomes an option at this stage. You're not really interested in golf. You're just interested in making high-level contacts and getting an understanding going. Some leaders at this stage take on charitable work to build equity for the organization. So part of your job is also to build equity for the organization politically. And then you take on mentoring role for the CEO designate, because by this time you should have people that are almost qualified to be CEO, and you take on mentoring role for that designate. Now note that sometimes the spiritual and political stages are combined. So it's not necessary that you have to have 5 stages or 6 stages. Sometimes some roles are combined. Your duty as a leader is to make yourself redundant with the passage of time. Let me repeat that. Your duty as a leader is to make yourself redundant with the passage of time. It is called self-redundancy. Now, in this last segment, this is the last segment of my paper. In this last segment, I want to talk to SMEs. If you have to spell everything out to your staff in total so that they wouldn't make a mistake, chances are that those staff are too junior to you and there's a gap in your organization. Let me repeat that. If you have to spell everything out to your staff in total so that they wouldn't make a mistake, chances are that your staff are too junior to you. You need someone in between you and them. Someone you don't need to spell everything out to. The earliest symptom of this gap is in your business is if you find yourself constantly screaming at your staff. I don't know if you've seen people like that. They are always constantly screaming. Their blood pressure is always going up. Their veins are always bulging. Their arteries, carotid arteries are threatening to burst. It is because they wouldn't just hire somebody to be in between them and the next level. You need an in-betweener. Some entrepreneurs think that they are saving money by not hiring higher grade of staff as in-betweeners. They don't realize it, but they're essentially declaring the missing staff's salary as profit. The person you are not paying, the person you refuse to engage, that you are appropriating a salary as profit. That's not profit. You're just eating up somebody's salary. It is false profit, and they are false profits. In fact, at some point, you're going to pay a heavy price for not hiring the higher grade staff. You need someone to hold the fort while you're away, someone who can reasonably deputize for you. You need someone who can interface with clients in lieu of you. Let me illustrate my point with another business experience I had. With this, I'll bring the lecture to a close. Now, before starting all the consulting, I ran a design firm. We designed and produced invitation cards, brochures, stationeries, and the like. One day I got a call from a church, and the church was hosting a program. One day I wanted branded notebooks as gift items for attendees, but the time frame was too short. So they asked me, can you produce these notebooks under pressure? I considered a lot of things, and I decided that yes, I knew I could produce it, so I made a promise that I would. At this time, I was working for the Italian embassy, the Brazilian embassy, the British embassy, the British mission, whatever, I was working for many, organizations like that. So I was pretty confident of my quality. What I needed to was to work on the time for this particular production. So I deduced I could take on the job. So I did the design, got it approved in one day, took the design for lithographic work, etched the plates, bought board and paper, and printed. This was the way we printed in those days. And I employed a laborious system of production that required direct supervision, because that was the only way I could guarantee quality and schedule. You can't leave a job to contractors to do. You must monitor your contractors. Your client did not employ these contractors. They are working for you. The client has no business whatsoever with the subcontractors. You are the only person that the client knows. And so stop giving excuses. Oh, it's with the printer. Oh, it's with the tailor. Oh, it's with the this. Don't mind them. They haven't done this for me and everything. The client has no business knowing any of your subcontractors. Anyway, everything was done except the spiral for these notebooks. But the spirals wouldn't take more than 1 hour. So we finished printing, we finished collating. All that we needed was a spiral system. So I left instruction with 2 of my staff to collect the notebooks after the spiraling and take to the client before the program started. So we were well within time. I congratulated myself on pulling off a miracle and went to my church for a music concert. After the concert, I came out of the church auditorium only to find 2 of my staff, the 2 staff, sitting at the entrance of the church. They had the notebooks in front of them. They said they were waiting for me. According to them, the man doing the spiral binding had taken on another job as soon as I left. They were angry with him and fought him until he finally did their job. They were still sitting with righteous indignation and had come to report to me in church. So I asked them, why didn't you take the notebooks to the client? There was no answer. They didn't think of taking the notebooks to the client because the program, I'm sorry. So they didn't think of taking the notebook to the client because the program will have started. We were supposed to deliver before the program started after all. They had been sitting there in front of that church for over an hour. I was livid. I packed the notebooks and put them in the boot of my car and drove like Jehu from Ikeja to Ikoyi. As I got to Ikoyi, and as I was parking my car, the auditorium began vomiting the attendees. I saw the attendees coming out of the auditorium. The program was over. I learned an invaluable lesson that day, that if the gap between you and the next member of staff is too wide, you are going to pay an awful price. Structure at its most basic level is having someone who understands imperatives and can take good decisions to ensure service delivery. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the lecture and I've simplified it for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I won't call you Pastor Leke. I don't know what I'll call you again, but thank you, Leke, for this, insightful, delivery. As usual, it's always mind-boggling, and there are a lot of things to unpack in your delivery. And we have quite a few questions there.
Thank you.
The first one, actually, I think you've answered it, but maybe for emphasis, let me ask it again. It says, in the configuration of mindsets, you said that don't be a bottleneck. That can you shed some light, on that? Don't be a bottleneck.
Okay. It's quite easy, okay? In any factory, in any system, and I'm trying not to complicate this, in any factory, in any system, there are what we call bottlenecks. There are places that things have to pass through and is narrow. So for example, let's assume that you're in a factory and you are producing 10 notebooks at the rate of, you are producing at the rate of 100 notebooks per hour. When it gets to the bottleneck, it reduces to about 50 per hour. Why? Because quality control is taking place and things like that. Okay. Now, you can use your imagination and see your organization that way. So let's imagine that your organization is, I don't know, you're a construction organization. The bottlenecks may be supply, logistics, accounts, all those things. So there are places where there's no supervision that is so much required. But there are some places that things have to slow down so that quality can come through. And there are some places that have to slow down so that fraud is not committed. Those are typical bottlenecks. Now, the rate of the efficiency of the organization, and this is management science I'm talking about now, the rate of the efficiency of the organization is dependent by the rate of efficiency at the bottleneck. Let me explain. If you have a relay race and the first runner runs very fast, but the second runner doesn't run very fast, the eventual outcome of the relay race is going to be dependent on how slow that second runner is. If everybody runs very fast, the system will be fast. But if you have a slow second runner, it will drag everybody back. That is a bottleneck. Everything must pass through it, but it's not fast. So the efficiency of an organization is determined by the inefficiencies of bottlenecks. And let me illustrate what I'm trying to say. I have a mentee. She's in Germany. She's running a factory in Germany. So she calls me one day, and I'm having a mentoring session with her, and she says, "Look, we search everywhere. I'm managing this factory and everything, and I know that there are problems, but I don't know where the problems are. So I'm in Lagos. I'm consulting for her in Germany." So I said to her that identify for me the bottlenecks. So she identified the bottlenecks. So I told her, okay, calculate the efficiencies at the bottleneck, but she's a scientist, so she can flow very well with me. So she calculated the efficiency of the bottleneck. You know what we discovered? The problem was not in the factory. The problem was in cutting goods away from the factory, the logistics outside the factory. So what you need to ask yourself is that, for example, you go for vacation and nothing can be treated in your company except you are back. Everything that is, that needs to be done in that organization is delayed by your 30 days. And there'll be missed schedules, there'll be missed opportunities, there'll be contracts you can't deliver. That's what you call a bottleneck. You have become an unnecessary bottleneck in the organization. However, assuming that you can break your role down and somebody can take a part, another person can take a part, or you can agree that, okay, let's agree on a collegiate system, then the system moves fast. So the problem many times for many, especially African business, and I don't know where we got this mentality from, is that without me, this business will not run. Without me, this church will not run. I mean, first of all, it's a spiritually ignorant statement to make, because God will show you, that He can run His church without you, okay? And I'm talking, that's my religion, okay? I don't mind all that stuff, okay? But I'm saying that if your organization cannot do anything without you, then you become the problem in your organization. You're a key man risk.
Okay. And those are people we call in church principalities. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because I understand what you are saying, but I also have to bring it down to where I practice, which is the church. So the name that we have for them is that they are principalities, and so there's a way we know what to do with municipalities, So number two, please. Number two, considering today's globalization, how can we restructure our businesses or brand to capture international markets without losing our identity? How can we? Yeah.
Good. Okay, two levels. First of all is the ability to work remotely.
Okay.
I remember I used to tell pastors to get ready for an era in which marriages would be conducted online, and everybody thought I was joking. I mean, I said these things 10 years ago. You know, now people are getting married without being in the same venue. The pastor is in one venue, the bride is in one venue, the groom is in another venue. What you need to know is that the globalization is to your advantage, because it means you are not being judged on the color of your skin, but the level of your delivery and the quality of the values that you have. What scares people is integrity. Can I transfer money to this company and they will work meritoriously without working off with my money? So you need to solve your integrity quotient out. Okay, the second thing is that you got to learn to work remotely. Let me give you an example, because I eat my own dog food. We had a gubernatorial campaign to handle in Nigeria, but by the time they approached us, it was Christmas. So someone was in America, all the major staff had traveled, the senior staff had traveled. Someone was in America, I think I was in Abu Dhabi, another staff was in Dubai, somebody was in Canada, we're all over the world, somebody was in Barbados. And we were able to coordinate a campaign and design campaign materials and all those things. We never met for once. For 1 month, we were working remotely and we were delivering to the client. That is the essence of globalization, because then you don't need to be physically present to get the job done. However, before you do that, remember what I said about values and culture. You need to, don't assume that workers are ready-made. Workers are made, they are taught. So you need to make your workers what you want. And the way we do it as Alder Consulting is that our values are important to us. So when you apply to join us and you passed all the exams and all the interviews and all that or whatnot, on the first day that you report for work, you don't do any work. We lock you up in a room and give you our manual to read. That manual talks about our philosophy, our history, our standards, everything about the company. How it all started, how we spend our money. We are very particular about social responsibility and all those things. When you read all those things and you are okay with them and you still want to join us, welcome. However, at that stage, you can still walk out. And that is something that people don't do. So if you are going to run a global system, there must be an agreement on a set of values and culture. This is the way we do it at Baltimore. This is the way we do it at Alder Consulting. This is the way we do things here. If you don't have that, you are going to have problems. And people think that they can circumvent that, or that they can use that to decorate annual reports or to decorate reception. And I've seen that a lot. Look, in 2001, there were 128 banks in Nigeria, maybe more. Today, there are hardly 15 banks, maybe 20 banks in Nigeria. What happened? A lot of those banks collapsed because of lack of definition of values and conceptual definition. And as you know, this is painful. You know, when you work so hard to build a brand and you see a bank go down in exactly 1 week, it's very painful. And so what I'm saying is that before you globalize and you seek opportunities out there, make sure that your team is functional. There are those who don't have the discipline to work at home. They must develop this discipline, because you must still have your management meeting on Monday or on Friday, if you like. You must review things. You know, what did we agree on last week? What did we say we were going to do? You review that first. Then after you've done that, then you go to new projects and you discuss everything so that the organization is transparent, and management, of course, assumes responsibility. So I'm not going to discuss the president with an immature staff. You know, it won't be at that meeting. You know, you have to have discipline to do all that. So the opportunities are there, and you should market yourself globally. And by the way, marketing is now cheap. It's as cheap as the cost of an ad on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. So it's very, very cheap. And you can do targeted marketing. At some point, as a Black person, you got to realize that excellence is not defined by the color of the skin, but by the level of medulla oblongata that is in your skull. So, and you go out there and you face it. And anyway, they don't even need to know you. All they want is your pedigree and your capacity, and you're going to deliver. So it's an opportunity, but make sure that you put your organization together. You don't want to go out for a job and a member of your staff is going behind the organization to pitch for the same job, especially with other people. And let me also say this, Pastor Tola. Some people don't want to employ. So when they have a project, they borrow from here, borrow from there, borrow from that, and they are on disclosed principals or in disclosed agents. So what happens is that you go to the organization with 5 of your staff, so-called staff, and you make a pitch. The next week, that organization receives another pitch from another company, and one of your staff is showing up. Is that you lost the job because it just means that you don't have steady staff, and people are afraid of that. Now, another thing that I need to say, and it's for someone. When you make a pitch, you have to be determined to beat the next person that is not going to be 80% versus 75%. That should be 80% versus 40%, especially in an African context. And it happens in America too. Let me give you an example because I'm using a lot of anecdotal evidence, from my personal experience. We were invited by a very, 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 very large bank to pitch for a job. There was a long process of qualification for the job. So we put together a presentation. We knew we needed to put together a very fantastic presentation. So we went on a retreat, and brainstormed on ideas and everything. The bank had developed the new brand, but they wanted to deploy the brand. And the question was, how could they deploy it fast? The foreign consultant said that they need 3 years to 5 years to deploy the brand. After our strategy session, at a retreat, we came to the conclusion that we don't need more than 6 months. So we're talking miracles. So they said, okay, how do we do it? So we put together this presentation, and I don't want to say it online, and everything, but we put together this presentation and we scored 80-something%. The next person scored 40%. So there was no doubt whatsoever as to who won. Now, I knew members of the board of that bank, but I refused to approach them because I didn't want to get involved in the politics of the organization, and I didn't want to be labeled the voice of one particular director or another director. So we won. So give us the job now while I started. A director said, well, there's this other company that he knows, and that the company was not invited to participate in the pitch process. And I knew what was going on. If we had scored 80% and another person scored 75%, they would never have given us the job because they say 75% is excellence, 80% is excellent, but we know this person. So let's give it to the person that we know, So we went away for another retreat, and we came up with another model because we knew that that director will have leaked a presentation to this competition. Mm-hmm. So they said, okay, the new competition will be within us as a first place holder, and the second place holder scored 40%. And the third place holder who we don't know. So as we were making the pitch, someone just blotted out and said, please, let's give the job to this older consultant. What are we doing here? Because the level of our presentation was so high that there was no way that they could do mago, as we say in Nigeria, or any of those things. They had to give us a job. So I'm saying that particularly for somebody, don't be average. Don't go for just 75%. Go for 80%, such that, and the best way to beat a large corporation, you don't need to beat the large corporation. You just need to beat the people that are doing the presentation for the large corporation. That's where the competition is. So whoever they send, as long as you can beat them, you're beating the large corporation. I'm saying that to somebody, and I think somebody needs to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I heard you while you were making your presentation that the level between the chief executive or the visionary and the staff should not be that far from each other, that they need someone in between to be able to disseminate the information. Now, this is a question, and I'm going to ask you from the church perspective. You understand? Now, what do you do as a church executive when the people next to you are the leaders, but every information passed to them that is meant for the rest of the people they are leading, they hold on to it, they don't pass it down? How do you overcome that structure?
Those are the real principalities.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, The Bible says, worship the Lord with your mind, your soul, and everything that you have. When you read the Message translation, it says, worship God with your intellect. It means that the people that we put in managerial capacity must be people who are intelligent enough to even understand why they should not hold on to things. And they're intelligent enough to understand that you harm the organization by doing what you are doing. Because you are disconnecting the organization. Like, think of railway cabins. When you pass information as a senior pastor to the next cabin, everything is okay. Then somebody disconnects the next cabin from the other cabin. And what happens? The railway derails or something goes wrong. Now, if you know that is important in your organization, then you must, punishment must also have reciprocal reward system. So it's either you are punished or you are rewarded. And I will ask you to fight such a culture, because it's such a terrible culture, because it's going to affect the entire organization. What is going to happen is that you're going to have intellectual constipation at the top, and then you're going to have gonorrhea or something, or kwashiorkor at the lower part, because the people don't understand. And the best way to do that is to regularly call a conclave of the church, of the workers, and brief them on your vision, irrespective of these people, so that everybody knows that there's nothing special about hearing from the pastor, anything, because they are holding up the church. And you must punish that, because in the corporate sector, nobody will tolerate that. So why will you tolerate that in a church, which I believe is a higher organization than a corporate sector? They have a higher purpose, they have a higher dimension. A corporate sector, we're only looking for money, but in this case, you're talking about lives, you're talking about so many things, and somebody decides that it's going to be a bottleneck and block everybody from, no, that person is working against the very essence of the organization. And such behavior must be called out and must be punished. So it may mean that you come to church and general meeting and you call out such a person, that Pastor so and so, I told you this and I told you to do this and you didn't do it. I hope this is the last time. And it also means that you have to check information flow within the system. You have to map information flow so that you are sure information is getting down. Because you are going to breed a horrible church culture in which sycophancy and all sorts of nonsense are going to come into place. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. So don't tolerate it. I won't tolerate it in my organization. Why are you tolerating it in your organization? A church is an organization. It's a biographic. It's a biological form. It's an organization. Yeah. It runs on things working slowly, things working together, dopamines firing up neurons and things like that. That's what it's all about. So when somebody constitutes himself to Almighty, the person is either removed or the person amends, and I don't care how spiritual you are, it is possible to get better job from an untrained apprentice than from a skilled rebel. That's what Solomon said.
Whoa. Okay. Thank you. Before we let you go, maybe one or two more questions,
Let me say one thing.
Okay.
Understand how important the question you ask is. It's a very important question. Okay. One of the reasons that we advise the federal government of Nigeria to fight 419, this advance fee fraud, is because it is so virulent and so terrible that it has a capacity to tarnish an entire generation of Nigerians. And it's worse than armed robbery. Armed robbery is consigned to a geographical space. Robbers either go and rob a bank in a particular location, but 419 for Nigeria ties the entire country. So if our government, I will put less effort on armed robbery and more effort against 419. Now, when you have people that are undermining the system, then you have a major problem as a church, because the system that Paul designed is an organic entity. It says some are hands, some are foot, some are eyes, some are nose. Everybody's supposed to provide a function and work together. So when somebody decides that the information flow will flow from the medulla oblongata and stop at the midriff, and then you have a major problem. That one is just not the principality. Somebody wants to destroy the organization. Because the organization must work. The organization must function. That is the essence of an organization, or else the pastor can be a lone evangelist preaching somewhere, but the day that you decide to build a system an organization, it must be an organization. It's not about one person, it's about all of us. There's no self-glorification, there's no self-emancipation. It has to be a group work. And I fight such things. I seriously fight such things. I won't allow it.
I thank God I asked the question, and I thank God for the passion with which you answered, the question. It's a major issue, and that's the truth. In churches, it's a major, and I know that online right now there are several pastors, and ministers that are listening to this, and you heard him right. We heard you very sound and clear. We need to deal with it. It's like a cancer, and that's the truth. Because when I think of this issue, what comes to my mind is when the Bible talks about the anointing oil that falls upon the head of Aaron, down to the body and to the skirts. The anointing oil did not at all lose potency as it was going to the skirt. It was the same power that flowed down. So every organization must ensure that whatever comes from the top should be disseminated to every department and people that they are working with.
Let me give you another biblical analogy. When you read the story of Joseph, people think of the boy who dreamed and all that, and it's not really about dreams. The dream was just an instrumentality, an ancient instrumentality of the fulfillment of a purpose. That's just what it was. But you notice something in the story of Joseph. The Bible says that his father sent him to go and give him some information to the brothers and go and find out what is going on. In other words, the father prided himself in receiving information, through and fro. So Joseph takes information to them. He brings information from them to the father. Now, the Bible says that he got to a place and he was lost. He was asking for where are his brothers. They took an independent decision that was not in line with strategy or in line with agreement and decided to do their own thing. And it took some time before Joseph could locate them. And what happened? What you have there is an information dislocation. So the information that's supposed to be coming from the management staff was not getting to the chairman of the company, and the vice president, who was Joseph, could not get the information. And when information is dislocated, you have a problem. And so what that led to is that it led to people who are able to, what you call individual sovereignty in consulting. When an individual takes on sovereign status and decides to do what he wants to do. I'm just trying to show you that this thing is much more than, you didn't pass on information and all that. You're talking individual sovereignty in an organization. And that is always dangerous. And you see what happened in Joseph's case, because information could no longer flow from here to there. So he asked, where are my brothers? They said, we saw them going somewhere. And it took effort, resources before Joseph could locate them. And then, of course, they dislocated the guy, said, and everything. They were planning to kill him. I'm just saying that something that we think as just non-flow of information is something that is so virulent. It's so virulent that it will affect the culture and the values of the organization. And then you have a real problem. So fight it with all you got.
Okay. Thank you so much. Maybe we'll take this as the last one. What must leaders do in creating a brand that engages and influences multiple generations? We talk of the baby boomers, millennials, the Gen Zs and all that. How do you, set up a brand that is able to influence all those generations? Or maybe it's not even possible. Sorry.
It's a huge thing that requires another seminar. Lord. Okay, so let me explain something, okay? That's what we call psychographic traits. Okay, so if I want to sell things to you, Pastor Tola, I look at you, you are wearing most likely Versace glasses, sunglasses. I look at you, your beard is maybe, what other brand? Prada. Your shirt is, I've located all your brands, okay? And I say, okay, let me sell my product to you, okay? So the typical thing is to dimension people numerically and say, okay, quantitatively, and say, okay, Pastor Tola possibly earns $10,000 a day, so based on that, we can sell this particular product to Pastor Tola. Okay, but that's not how branding works. Branding works on the psychographic traits of people. So there are people who don't earn as much as Pastor Tola who will buy these expensive things because that's their psychographic trait. They don't have the money. And you have that case in America where the people that are buying the most expensive things, the Air Jordans and all those things, are those who can't afford it. And the people who can afford it are buying cheap wristwatches and things like that. So you are not going to sell based only on quantitative parameters. You're only also going to sell based on psychographic traits. How does this person see life? How does this person think? Where does he go? What will motivate him to buy things? You are looking for all those things. So what you do is that you develop what you call a typology. You take Pastor Tola as a typical example of the consumer that you are chasing, and then you map him and say, okay, on Monday he does this, on Tuesday he does this, on Wednesday he does this, at the end of the month he collects his salary. So we're going to target end of the month. We're going to, profile this product in a way that makes him feel that he needs the product, and therefore he's going to buy. So you need to be able to do that. Then another thing, and I don't want to get into this today, you have to do what you call the conceptual definition of your brand. What is the concept of your brand? Think of Body Shop. The concept of the brand is very, very clear. Think of Amazon. The concept of the brand is very clear. All the successful brands are built on concepts. So what is the concept of your brand? Sometimes your cause, what do you believe in? All those things are what informs the brand. For example, in Alder Consulting, we don't look at certificates. Why? Because even my certificate is irrelevant to the organization. So we're looking for brilliant young men and women. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you studied. If you studied mathematics or any of those funny courses that people say are not relevant, you are the one we're looking for. Because we're able to domesticate the discipline that you studied to use to solve a client's problem. The bank that I told you about, it was a London Underground Railway model that we used to solve the problem. That's what cut the production from 3 years to 4 or 5 years to 6 months. We studied the London Underground Railway system. So that's what you are looking at. So study the psychographic traits of the brand. That tells you what the people can afford, what they are really looking for, because most of the time we're trying to sell what people don't want. We're trying to sell them the reason they don't want to buy something. So for example, you think you're going to sell a Mercedes and say, because it lasts longer. Who told you that people want to buy, take Coca-Cola. They say Pepsi is sweeter. But who told you that people buy Coke or a cola drink because it's sweet? So you have to ask such questions and get into the head of the consumer. If I were to get into this, I as a 20-something-year-old, I consulted for a company. Big company, 0 sales. And they had advertising agencies working them, 2 major advertising agencies working for them. So they had seen something that I did, and I walked into the company and they said, what can you do? And I didn't, all that consulting had not started by this time. And I listened to them and I realized what their problem was. So I did them a paper that explains this generation, what moves them, what they drive, what they like. And the difference was just not selling the phone, because this company was selling mobile phones. The difference was that I didn't want to sell the phones to them as a utility. I wanted to sell the phones to them as a status symbol, because I had examined their psychographic traits and I realized that that's what is important to them. And within 6 months, that company moved from, you're talking something like, I was 20-something, they're talking something like 30-something years ago. This is what I'm relating now. That company moved from 0 to 100 million naira in sales in 6 months. Put that in perspective, a Mercedes, brand new Mercedes was 70,000 naira then. And I remember they paid me a consultancy fee for that year, about 1 million. And the next year they promised another 1 million and plus more commissions and all those things, all because I was able to get into the head of the buyer. Sometimes we are designing products and designing ideas around what we want, not what the consumer wants. And so you want to sell to millennials. How do millennials think? Where do they go? That already tells you where to advertise. What language do they use? That already tells you the tone of advertisement and what words you should use. You want to sell to people like me? What do we, at this age, what are we looking for? Why should we buy something? And then so it's targeted advertising that you do. And if your product is not relevant in my life, forget it. You're not going to build any brand in my life. Because a brand makes people pay habitual obedience to a set of stimuli. That is why Omo, Blue Omo, is still new 40 years after.
Okay. Thank you so much. The last part of your, delivery, I know that my team for this GLC conference, they are listening to you. I know they are listening to you because these are the things we talk about. How do we project, this conference? How do we advertise? And this is the answer that you've given. So there's no shortcut to it. We just have to do what it takes, and then we'll get to where we want to get to. Once again, on behalf of the entire team here, we want to say thank you so much for accepting to speak and being a blessing, to us. My regards to your family, and thank you once again. Thank you so much.
I'll send the lecture to you so that people can download from when? From Monday.
Okay.
People can download. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. You may log off now. Thank you so much. I'm now going to hand over to our host. And before I do that, please, I want to remind us that next year we already have the dates. It's 22nd to 23rd of September 2023, 22nd to 23rd, 2023. If you want to be part of the Great Leaders Pastors Alliance, please go to greatleadership.net, and click on the icon of GLPA, fill the form there, and this is only for pastors who are pastoring churches. Pastors who are pastoring churches. I'm talking about senior pastors of churches. Our host will come on now and give us the other announcements. Once again, thank you so much for being part of this conference. God bless you. Zanita, you can take over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I hope everyone has thoroughly enjoyed this year's conference as it's been a blessing. A few reminders: if you'd like to stay up to date with all things Great Leadership Conference, please sign up for the newsletter. Please, you can use the QR code that's being shown on the screen or go to greatleadership.net. Also, if you'd like to purchase the audio and visual of this year's conference, you can do so using the information that will be shown on the screen. And if you'd like to donate, please do so using the information that will be shown on the screen as well. There'll be 2 different QR codes that will come up and will give you the opportunity to donate to the Great Leadership Conference. Once again, we do have a survey. That survey should be going out very soon. That will allow you to help us help you, right, for the 2023 conference. So let us know your feedback for this year's conference and things we can improve, and we'll be so blessed that you did. Friendly reminder that we do have books for sale. I Am Better Than This and Line Crossers. So please, you can purchase those books using the information that will be shown on the screen below and be a blessing. And as Pastor already mentioned, 2023, 2023, September 22nd, September 23rd. We will be back again for the Great Leadership Conference. I hope you all have been immensely blessed. Have a great day and see you guys next year. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome to the Great Leadership Conference 2022. We are excited and glad to have you here. We know that you will be impacted and blessed as we learn from leadership experts who understand the complexity of today's global environment and are committed to help us navigate today's biggest challenges. This year's lineup includes great leaders like Dr. Sam Chan, Reverend Sam Adeyemi, Mr. Leke Older, Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo, Mr. Benki Wellington, and the host, our very own Pastor Tola Ojutala.
It is who or what you follow that you become. When we look at your life or whoever you are following, if you don't like what you are seeing, it's time for you to follow somebody else.
People don't rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their systems. How do you get people to commit themselves? It's a three-part process: heart, head, hands.
A winning strategy is a detailed plan for achieving success in a given situation. A winning strategy always has that. The goal has to be clear. If you don't know what you're looking for, you will not recognize it when you see it.
Because I am female, I find myself constantly struggling to prove that I have equal value as a human being, that I matter, that I am capable, that I am competent, that I'm deserving of respect, and I deserve the opportunity to give the world my best.
God already had that end result in mind before He created you. You can only find your calling in the mind of your Creator.
Now, there are two dimensions of Jesus Christ. There's a manifested dimension of Jesus Christ. There's the unmanifested dimension of Jesus Christ. The manifested dimension of Jesus Christ is the man who walked the Sea of Galilee, healed the sick, opened blind eyes, fed the poor, and all that stuff.
Today, Dr. Sam Chan will be speaking on restructuring your leadership roles in ministry and the marketplace. Mr. Benki Wellington will be speaking on building structures for your dreams and visions. Pastor Tola will be speaking on structure and restructuring in life and ministry. And Reverend Sam Adeyemi will speak on creating and sustaining structures for success. This promises to be a life-changing experience. GLC 2022.
Too often, we drift from one action to another without thinking about the choices we have made. In fact, our direction seems normal that we don't even realize we have made a choice that has significant consequences. The book Line Crossers by Pastor Tola Odutola is a book that helps you find wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strides of hope and confidence. To get a copy of this book, simply visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order and watch yourself cross over into your victory. It is easy to become complacent with life. The hurtful backgrounds, failed dreams, and scars from your past gives one excuses for having no expectations in life. However, in the book, I Am Better Than This, Pastor Tola Odutola inspires readers to relentlessly pursue a better future despite the challenges that will surely arise. To get a copy of this life-transforming book, kindly visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order.
Today, leadership has proven to be the most influential and critical element of businesses and organizations. At every level of an organization, strong leadership skills are required to drive innovation, inspire performance, boost productivity, and collaborate within a diverse workforce. An effective leader possesses the necessary tools and skills to inspire and impact their teams, allowing the organization to run smoothly and cooperatively through conferences and seminars hosted in various cities around the world, including the Great Leadership Conference right here in Baltimore. Speakers and industry experts share insights on how to improve processes, develop systems, and lead the next generation. The Great Leadership Conference has featured prominent and world-renowned speakers such as Pastor Paul Adefarasin, Dr. Mensa Otabil, Pastor Agu Iruku, Dr. Tim Elmore, Dr. Sean Lovejoy, Pastor Cindy Trim, and Pastor Femi Atoyebi, amongst others. The Alpha Leadership Conference is the vision of Pastor Tola Ojutala. He is the senior pastor of Jesus House Baltimore.
Conference materials such as audio and video recordings of this conference can be purchased in the GLC website at www.greatleadership.net. A short survey will be available during the conference via a link that will be posted in the chat section of this live stream. Kindly complete this survey.
From one action to another without thinking about the choices we've made. In fact, our direction seems so fixed and normal that we don't even realize we've made a choice that has significant consequences. Flying Crosses by Pastor Tola Odutola is a book that helps you find the wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strength, hope, and confidence. To get your copy of this book, you can simply visit alphaleadershipconference.net to place your order and watch yourself crossing over into your victory. No doubt, it is easy to become complacent with life. The hurtful backgrounds, failed dreams, and scars from the past seem like sufficient excuses for having low expectations in life. However, in this book, Pastor Tola Odutola inspires readers to relentlessly pursue a better future despite the challenges that will surely arise. To get your copy of this life-transforming book for just $9.99, you can simply visit alphaleadershipconference.net.
Welcome to the Great Leadership Conference 2022. We are excited and glad to have you here. We know that you will be impacted and blessed as we learn from leadership experts who understand the complexity of today's global environment and are committed to help us navigate today's biggest challenges. This year's lineup includes great leaders like Dr. Sam Chan, Reverend Sam Adeyemi, Mr. Leke Older, Mrs. Audrey Jo Ezigbo, Mr. Benki Wellington, and the host, our very own Pastor Tola Ojutala.
It is who or what you follow that you become. When we look at your life or whoever you are following, if you don't like what you are seeing, it's time for you to follow somebody else.
People don't rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their systems. How do you get people to commit themselves? It's a three-part process: heart, head, hands.
A winning strategy is a detailed plan for achieving success in a given situation. A winning strategy always has that. The goal has to be clear. If you don't know what you're looking for, you will not recognize it when you see it.
Because I am female, I find myself constantly struggling to prove that I have equal value as a human being, that I matter, that I am capable, that I am competent, that I'm deserving of respect, and I deserve the opportunity to give the world my best.
God already had that end result in mind before He created you. You can only find your calling in the mind of your Creator.
Now, there are two dimensions of Jesus Christ. There's a manifested dimension of Jesus Christ, and there's the unmanifested dimension of Jesus Christ. The manifested dimension of Jesus Christ is the man who walked the Sea of Galilee, healed the sick, opened blind eyes, fed the poor, and all that stuff.
Today, Dr. Sam Chan will be speaking on restructuring your leadership roles in ministry and the marketplace. Mr. Benke Wellington will be speaking on building structures for your dreams and visions. Pastor Tulla will be speaking on structure and restructuring in life and ministry. And Reverend Sam Adeyemi will speak on creating and sustaining structures for success. This promises to be a life-changing experience. GLC 2022.
Too often, we drift from one action to another without thinking about the choices we have made. In fact, our direction seems normal that we don't even realize we have made a choice that has significant consequences. The book Line Crossers by Pastor Tola Odutola is a book that helps you find wisdom and courage you need to cross over the lines that challenges you. No matter your background, the message of this book will help you cross over your lines with strides of hope and confidence. To get a copy of this book, simply visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order and watch yourself cross over into your victory. It is easy to become complacent with life. The hurtful backgrounds, failed dreams, and scars from your past gives one excuses for having no expectations in life. However, in the book, I Am Better Than This, Pastor Tola Odutola inspires readers to relentlessly pursue a better future despite the challenges that will surely arise. To get a copy of this life-transforming book, kindly visit www.greatleadership.net to place your order.
Today, leadership has proven to be the most influential and critical element of businesses and organizations. At every level of an organization, strong leadership skills are required to drive innovation, inspire performance, boost productivity, and collaborate within a diverse workforce. An effective leader possesses the necessary tools and skills to inspire and impact their teams, allowing the organization to run smoothly and cooperatively through conferences and seminars hosted in various cities around the world, including the Great Leadership Conference right here in Baltimore. Speakers and industry experts share insights on how to improve processes,